Need a belt.
Does that take like 5 minutes? Isn't it on wheels? Are you ready?
Chair, all those chairs.
We're on air, you're on air. Got you. We're gonna go. I'd like to call this meeting to order. A meeting of the village board on Monday, March 17th at 7 p.m. in the Germantown Village Hall boardroom and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all village board members present except for Trustee Pieper, who will be joining us shortly. At this time, I'll ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with justice for all. Thank you. Next item we have on the agenda is the swearing in of new fire department lieutenants, and we'll call the chief forward to introduce each person, and the village clerk will help us with the swearing in. Chief.
Thank you. We have tonight swearing in for the first full-time lieutenants in the fire department's history. The first one tonight will be Lieutenant J.J. Wolf.
Comes. You gonna bring him up here? Could join the clerk up by the flag.
That microphone. Thank you.
Because you have to state your name and there you go.
Hello.
You're going to speak loudly in the microphone.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
You're going to state this after me, but first I want you to raise your right hand. I, John Wolf,
I, John Wolf,
having been appointed to lieutenant or having been promoted to lieutenant
having been promoted to lieutenant
with the Germantown Fire Department,
with the Germantown Fire Department,
and have entered upon the duties thereof,
have entered into the duties thereof.
do you swear or affirm?
I swear or affirm
You will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the state of Wisconsin,
the state of Wisconsin,
the Code of Ordinances with the Village of Germantown,
and the Code of Ordinances with the Village of Germantown.
that you will faithfully and impartially
I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of your ability, so help you God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations. Get to give a pen. Okay. He's going to come up here and pen you. And me, pen. Sign up. And whoever wants to take pictures, feel free to come up.
You don't have to be at the back of the room. Come on forward.
Next, we'll have Alex Diamatopoulos.
Raise your right hand, speak in the microphone so they could hear you. State your name out loud.
I, Alex Diamatopoulos,
Having been promoted to lieutenant
having been promoted to lieutenant
with the Germantown Fire Department
with the Germantown Fire Department
and have entered upon the duties thereof,
and have entered the duties upon thereof,
You swear or affirm
I swear and affirm
that you will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the state of Wisconsin,
the state of Wisconsin,
the Code of Ordinances of the Village of Germantown,
the Code of Ordinances of the Village of Germantown,
and that you will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office to the best of your ability.
discharge the duties of said office to the best of my abilities.
You God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. You baby holder?
Coming.
Say, we got grandma over there, dude. Okay. That's one.
Come on, get closer. Yep. Terrific.
You can palm up. There you go. You're going to sign right there.
And Derek Beeler.
You go. For me.
Yes.
All right. Have you raised your right hand? Repeat after me. State your name.
I, Derek Beeler,
Promoted to lieutenant
having been promoted to lieutenant
with the Germantown Fire Department.
with the Germantown Fire Department
Have entered upon the duties thereof.
and have entered on the duties thereof.
You swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution
I swear and affirm I will support the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Code of Ordinances with the Village of Germantown,
and the Code and Ordinance of the Village of Germantown,
and that you will faithfully and impartially
and faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the said office to the best of your ability.
of the said office to the best of my abilities.
You got it.
So help me God. Thank you. Appreciate it.
On that line.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief, for including us in that, that event and that swearing in of your lieutenants. We appreciate it very much. Next item on the agenda is the President's Report, and we'll start tonight's report with some information from the village clerk.
I just wanted to remind everyone that the in-person absentee voting for the spring election is going to start happening tomorrow. So the in-person absentee voting will go beginning tomorrow and go all the way through for 2 weeks. We are offering Saturday extended hours in addition to Friday an extended hour and the first Thursday this week extended hours till 6 p.m. For a full schedule for the dates and time, please refer to the Village of Germantown website. Go to the clerk's page for that information for those specific dates and times. In-person absentee voting here at Village Hall in this room, in the boardroom, and anyone that goes to the polling location or in person here requires to have a photo ID to get a ballot. If you don't know what's on your ballot and you want to look at those things in advance, please visit the My Vote Wisconsin website. Type in your name and your address to see what is on your ballot. Thank you.
And what were the additional hours that we're running? Were there some that are beyond 5 and some that are on Saturday?
Sure. So this first extended hours will be this week, Thursday until 6 o'clock p.m. Normal hours are 8:30 to 4:30. So again, we're going to extend that till on Thursday till 6. And then Saturday from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. The next week, we have Friday until 5 o'clock PM and Saturday again, 9 AM to 2 PM.
Okay, just so everybody's aware, that any of the extended hours that are occurring, the wages are being covered by the county, and that's part of the sales tax revenue sharing program. So they're extending the time of the ballots and giving us a portion of the sales tax to cover the wages for that. So that's part of the benefit of the revenue sharing with the county. Additional information for President's Report on March 29th at 4 PM. There's going to be an event at Village Bowl. It's a bingo for canines. So if anybody's interested in supporting the canines, please feel free to go to Village Bowl. That's in Menominee Falls, off of, what is that, Town Line, or is that that Main Street before you get to the Bug Line area there. So please join for supporting our canine group. And then on Saturday, April 5th, at 11 AM, there's the Easter egg hunt at Fireman's Park, and that's free for any child age 1 to 7. Now, we don't group them all up so that the 7-year-olds are running over the 1-year-olds. They split them up so that the youngest are on their own, and in the middle, like 3 to 5, and then like 6 and 7-year-olds. But it's a great event. It's fun to watch, and if you got some time, bring your children out there or just come and watch and participate. So that'll be on April 5th. That's all I have for President's Report. So the next item that we have on the agenda is appointments of board, committee, or commission members, and we have one listed, and that's for the Ethics Board, and that's for Aaron J. Foley.
Move approval of the appointment to the Ethics Board of Aaron J. Foley.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on a motion to approve? Trustee Jan Miller.
Could we have some information about this person? They must have filled out an application.
Absolutely.
They did. Mr. Foley is an attorney with the Von Briesen Law Firm here in town. He is partners with Barry White, who is the chair of our Board of Appeals, and was looking to do something here in the community to give back to the community. He's got, I think he said 3 kids in the 7 to 12 range who are all Germantown Public School kids, and seem to be enjoying themselves doing that.
So he is a resident.
Yes.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
One opposed. Next item is announcements of forthcoming events of public interest. We'll start with committee reports and committee chairs with Trustee Terry Kaminsky.
Public Works will meet in this room on Wednesday, April 2nd at 5:30 PM.
Thank you. Trustee Rick Miller.
General Government and Finance will meet on April 21st at 5:30 in this room.
All right, and the next public safety meeting is?
April 7th, 6 PM in this room.
All right, thank you, Trustee Cutts. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to bring forward for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee, or department reports? Trustee Cutts.
The Library Board will meet on Wednesday, March 26th at the library at 5:30.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? If there's nothing else, then we'll go to the next item, which is citizen input. If there's anyone within our audience that would like to come forward for citizen input, please fill out a yellow slip. And when you come to the podium, state your name and your address for the record. Also, if anyone's joining us via WebEx that would like to participate in citizen input, you're welcome to do so. Just make your wishes known so that the moderator can bring you forward at the correct time.
My name is Lynn Bednars. I live on Pawnee Court. I'm coming to these meetings relatively late in the time I've lived here, but what's going on with this village center is I have seen, none of us have seen any developers coming in at all to present to us different ideas. The board is in direct defiance of the will of the taxpayers of this community. You were given a trust that should have taken consideration the will of the people, and you're supposed to represent, okay? And I don't think that's being done. When I hear 1.7 millions for this property, 1.2, now $5 million for the property Ascension, which houses the clinic itself. I never heard about that, and I don't think 80% of the people in this town did. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for all of this? That's almost $10 million. And you're taking our earnings and spending them how you see fit, not on how the taxpayers want. You know what that's called? Socialism in plain language, okay? Here's what the desire of the people. Everywhere I go, I talk to people. Are you a Germantown resident? Yes. Do you know what's going on? And a lot of them know, a lot of them don't. And what they don't want, even at the meetings we had here, they do not want high-density housing on that village center. And that's what you're planning first, okay? Before, there's no retail in consideration because some of the properties are leased for 2 more years. So what's going to happen then? They don't want high-density housing that you're proposing. They do not want grants used. I don't know if you're proposing that, but if they come up, the minute you accept a grant from the government, they're in control, not us, okay? I don't think the people who live here want that anymore. And they do not want TIDs, which you've already mentioned twice on the village. You're constantly bringing up TIDs, and they don't want them. We want our tax money. This is being rammed through, and we don't want our money 10, 20 years from now. We want to have the tax money now, and we don't get it when the board proposes a TID. You're buying property without our approval, and we want a return on our money. And this is just getting so out of hand, it's really crazy. I made a lot of phone calls today. Even state representatives say this board is ramming this project down the throats of people. They're paying too much for property, and this whole project should be paused because it's really going too fast. And I don't think any of you know what this is going to cost you. And that's wrong. We should be having developers coming in here that you can be shown what's going to be done and how much it's going to cost to do it and cost you on your tax bill. And they're saying, oh, it's not going to raise taxes. I have a question. If my taxes go up, can I bring the difference to the board and have them pay the extra bill then because they did not tell me the truth?
Ms.
I don't
Benders, are
think-
you wrapping it up, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
So even the state reps acknowledge that this whole thing should be paused, period, and not rammed through. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Anyone else wishing to come forward for citizen input?
Good evening, Scott Heffley, Old Farm Road. Couple comments tonight. I've been to about 6 community gatherings in the last month. I go to a lot of them and I talk to everybody there because they're open events for the community. And I have not heard much support at all. No matter what certain trustees say about all the support we have for this village center, the average people don't know what's going on with it. They think that the density's too deep and on and on. So that's interesting that everybody thinks it's a wonderful idea sitting up there, or some of you do, and people that live in Germantown are not so sure about it. We have staff that doesn't live here that thinks it's a great idea too. Another thing that happened, I was at the school board meeting. Thank you, Trustee Baum, Trustee Miller, and Trustee Kutz showed up, and Mr. Krecklo and Dean were there, and that was good because we should try to olive branch with them. There's been contention before. School board's putting together 2 expensive studies to help them plan for the future, tell them how the enrollment's going to be if we have the impact of the TIDs and the potential development. And they asked this village board, to take a pause until they get you very good information, the best information from the best developers out there. We live on the Tracy Cross report. This Rofer that's doing this stuff is as good as they are or better. Their information is as solid as you can get. They're asking you, it's in a resolution, to pause until you have the information. So that's what they want you to do. Yet we have a paid developer or a paid person for the village saying there's only going to be 6 students out of 500 units. Where's that source from? That's made up stuff. We don't know that. She can't say that. She can't speak to that. So to find out the right number would be important to know how we should proceed with this, okay? These are called optics. You know what optics are? That's how the village perceives what's going on here. And the perception of what we're doing is not good in the village, all right? Going back to 2019, 71% of the village, you guys talk about the 2019 survey, you wouldn't do it in 21 when I asked after COVID, but you did a 2019, 71% said we don't want multifamily housing. What are you doing right now? What are you doing with these developers? Multifamily housing, right? That's what you're doing. So you don't listen to the residents. Apparently, if we need multifamily housing, it's great for the developers. It's not good for this community without input. It's just developers want this. It's great. Yeah, we'll build 500 units. We'll make them 5 stories tall, and they can look in the backyards of the people that live in Heritage Hills. Boy, isn't that great. Okay? My concern is that you are on some sort of quick path. I certainly hope it's not premeditated upon you promise some developer a TID or whatever, and that's why we have 15 people that want to develop in this village without any kind of input. Let's just get it done and we'll see what happens. I don't want to just see what happens. If there's a TID involved, how about let's see what the heck they're going to do for this village and have plans and have drawings and have all the things that we've been asking for that we're promised is coming. So why are we working to create a TID before we even know what the heck this is going to really look like other than pretty pictures on a wall? Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you for coming forward. Does anyone else wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input?
My name is Heidi Hampton Davis. I live on Butternut Road in Germantown. I've been in Germantown for about 25 years. I came to speak tonight because I was at the school board meeting and the village meeting the other night. And it was kind of clear to me that the village wasn't really correct or informed. The village board seems to only have voted on the purchase of properties and not the starting of a TID. Why isn't this just appearing as a regular agenda item for review and approval authorizing a move forward with the TID creation? I'm a resident of District 4 and I don't agree with the TID resolution on the agenda, and I ask that one of you would move to have it tabled until after the election where there will be full representation in my district. I know many are opposed to the TID, especially the one that includes residential. That brings me to my next point of accuracy of information. Trustee Baum presents one number of 0.2% as the number per 100 units of apartments, and then your consultants presented at the Plan Commission stating between 22 and 27 students per 100 units of apartments. That's a big swing, and if the real number falls somewhere in between, at say 75 school-age students for the village center housing, that could potentially mean 35 plus students at MacArthur Elementary. No matter what the number is, the village board has knowledge that our school district is awaiting a study results to get a clearer picture of proposed developments and how it will impact our schools. This should serve as a huge mandate to pause on the village center until that information is known. Do you really want us residents to possibly be forced into another referendum for the district without proper planning? The short-term resolution of a larger class sizes or changing of school boundaries are not things that parents take lightly, as these hugely will impact their kids. Another point to consider. I know a traffic study was done, but it didn't account for the 45 plus vehicles heading north on Pilgrim to get to MacArthur or Kennedy Middle School, only to turn around and head south on the same road. The impact was likely missed in the study if they were relying on Trustee Baum's information. So please table the TID resolution and make it a fully informed decision alongside the school board. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Anyone else wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input?
Sarah Larson, Butternut Road. As a resident of District 4, I am asking that the TID resolution be tabled until the District 4 is fully represented after the election. I know that I frustrate some of the board members as I dig in and comment on things that are happening at the board level. And my husband pointed out an interesting fact that had you done the right thing and given the resident his $1,400 conditional use permit over the Grosnick debacle, I probably wouldn't have dug in. But when I looked at the open records and saw the underhandedness of it and the fact that you wouldn't give them the $1,400 back, that then begs the question, what else is going on that is not good for the residents of our community? And so then in terms of Grosnick, I understand that there's some maintenance now that we're having to do on that property. And nothing's happening with that property because we bought it for no particular reason, supposedly. So I wonder if this is going to be now what the Flower Source and Ascension turn out to be, that we will have all of these expenses because we've rushed into it without a formal plan. Another financial note is, so with the Sterling Pharma and the extension of the TID that you just did, you were giving them a 30% kickback on the increase of tax increment. So essentially, instead of them paying 100% of taxes on the increased value, they are only paying like 65% or whatever. Are we going to give that same kickback to those in the village center as an incentive instead of closing out a TID district sooner? I think that's a question. You know, do the rest of the residents get a kickback on their taxes? You know, when I decide I'm going to paint my deck or put up a new shed, do I get a kickback on my taxes because I've improved the area and upped our tax levy? I don't think so. And so I don't think we should be giving that to these folks, and I would expect that the board would answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Does anyone else wish to come forward at this time for citizen input? Anyone else? No, you go. No, you go. Thank you.
Okay, first I want to say, could be better if this weren't on St. Patrick's Day, and I hope in the future that doesn't happen, okay? So after that, myself along with others spoke at the Plan Commission against the zoning amendment changes and the deletion of protest petitions as a means to stop a zoning change. Even after listening to at least 5 residents speaking against the changing an ordinance, the Plan Commission's vote was in favor of it. Then a resident spoke out asking how could they possibly vote that way after listening to everyone complain. And they realized that they may have voted wrong as 2 opposing motions were rolled into one. The Plan Commission then had to clarify the motion and vote again. After all this, it was still a tie. Now, this is contrary to what I can see in, let me see, the business of the village board today. It says that the plan committee, and I could be misreading this because I don't know much about this. It says that the plan commission action has a motion to recommend to the village board to approve the proposed text amendment for consideration presented. And then it says the vote failed. So I'm asking you to be very careful of what you are voting for today. Are you voting for the negative recommendation from the Plan Commission, or is it to pass the original proposed text, which a lot of us residents don't approve? If the original ordinance is passed, it will give the ability of just 5 members of the village board to change zoning, in contrast to the 7 it would currently take at a 3/4 vote. Let's keep the village of Germantown a community-based area where more votes are needed to make changes in our community. I am asking the village board to vote in support of the negative recommendation if that's the truth, about maintaining the 3/4 vote and changing. Additionally, please do not take away the citizens' opportunity to file protest petitions against any proposed zoning as discussed in Agenda Item E. Protest petitions are the last resort for the residents to have our voices heard before zoning changes are made. You, our elected trustees, should hear our concerns, listen to our concerns, and then represent the concerns of your respective residents. Thank you. Oh, and I'm Tammy Schneider, W204 and 9699 Lannon Road. Thanks.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input?
Hello, I'm Scott Schrader, West 19602 County Line Road. Unlike Tammy, I was not able to make the Planning Commission meeting the other week in which some of this drama unfolded about protest petitions and supermajorities. Though I just would like to state my position on it that in the case of rezoning, that's a very permanent decision. It's very difficult to reverse when it's changed. And in the case of something like a development, granting a rezone and allowing a project to proceed can have potentially disastrous impacts on prior residents of a particular plot or zone, affecting their homes, their livelihoods, et cetera. And a decision of a gravity like that is not something to be taken lightly. Retaining a supermajority enables a higher bar to clear, and it really ensures that the correct decision is made by the most number of people, and a greater due diligence must be done, must be passed in order for a rezone to occur. I should hope that the village board agrees with me on this one, and would like to see that the greatest amount of due diligence must be done for something like that. I see in the agenda tonight, the text as written. The proposal is that the village board requests the reversal of 2023 Act 16, eliminating the ability for local communities to give effect to zoning protests. I hope the board votes to keep the most amount of power at the local level, and to keep local politics local. That's about it. So thank you. And thank you especially to trustee Jan Miller for her offline work and commentary on this with me. Thanks.
Thank you for coming forward. Anyone else wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input? Anyone else? You?
Hi, I'm Gidget Strike, and I live on West 204 North 9713 Lannon Road. I'm speaking tonight to oppose the dissolution of the protest positions for zoning change. As you all know, there are several large development possibilities happening in Germantown, one of which has been talked about several times here recently, the one on Lannon Road. Often residents of this area do not feel that they are heard when concerns are brought up. Protest petitions are there so that if we are not being heard, we still have a voice. If there is a change to be had to a community, especially those it directly affects, should it not be considered that what the majority of the area surrounding wants versus just a few of the board members? What if this is in your front yard? Would you not have want to be heard? These residents have to sign and get notarized protest petitions in their busy lives. It's not that we're just signing a piece of paper that somebody showed us at the grocery store. We've all had to research what this is going on, take an extra step, and go to the bank or wherever to get these notarized. It seems extremely ironic to all of us that when a development, especially in the area that there's a big concern or one that wants to be built that the residents don't want, that now is then the dismantling of the protest position comes up for change? Why was it not brought up a year ago or forever ago? Please let our community still have somewhat of a voice. And guys, I'm not here as some random person who wants to fight the board. I absolutely do not. I wish you guys were on our side about what our community wants. I've been here for 48 years and I have seen a lot of change. And I think all of us want our community to stay a community. We don't want a million rentals where we don't know our neighbors and we have turnover here and there. And nobody wants to fight it. We just want our community to stay what it has been. And quickly about all the massive developments, especially on Lannon and County Line, only because that's the one I'm the most educated in. I did talk directly to these developers, as a lot of us have, and they literally said when we brought up all of our concerns, because the last meeting that in the library was about to hear us, and so many of us said, well, why don't you guys want to do more single families, or why can't you hear us, or maybe make some changes? And they literally said to our face, because we won't make enough money. And that sucks, because that is not what we are about. It is not about the money. It's about what should be important to our community, to all of us. It's not just about taxes. It's about where we live as a community. That's it.
Thank you for coming forward.
Yes. Clap for her, right? Come on, give it up. Happy St. Pat's. So I'm Scott Meisner. I live with her on Landon Road. I hope you listened to her and didn't space out. I know you've heard this before over and over and over again. And, you know, I'm concerned with this discussion and this vote tonight that it has coincidental timing. With the vote coming up April 1st, you know, and the property near our house, and, you know, trying to like slam these things through is concerning to me. And it's things that we, the people of this community, don't want. You know, we don't care if a subdivision goes across the street from us. That'd be great. We can walk, we can run, we could rollerblade. I wouldn't, but we could. That would be wonderful, but we don't want 300 units on 80 acres. That's ridiculous. You know, if we scale that down to you know, you could do 30-acre lots. That's fine. We could do affordable housing in there for 300 to 400,000, which is affordable nowadays, apparently. But, you know, that's what we're fighting against, the row housing and the things that could potentially become rental properties where people don't have skin in the game and they don't care where they're living. You know, this is going to bring our property value down if certain things move in there. If a subdivision moved in there with reasonable sized homes and lots, it's going to make our property value go up. That's good. We're happy. We're not going to come here 75 times a year to argue this. You know, I don't want to. We don't want to be here. She hates public speaking, by the way. She hates it. She's like, you better come up with me. And she said I couldn't swear. I had to be relaxed, you know, and I'm like, all right, I'll do my best. Okay, but that's what we want. And, you know, it's just do what's right for the community and the people. And maybe the timing's not right for some of this stuff. You know, we talked to the developers that are going across the street. None of them could answer any of our questions, you know, with Stepping Stone. You know, we asked this guy and he's like, oh, I think Fred over there knows. And Fred didn't know. You know, they couldn't answer our questions, you know. And I know these guys. I've been in the home building industry for 30 years. I know how this works. You know, if they're not going to make money and lots of money, they're not going to do it. They're talking about blasting, which is going to screw up our foundations, which is right across the street. They're going to pull water from wells, which is going to yank stuff out of our wells. This is real stuff that's going to affect our lives. Okay, so I hope you see it that way, and I hope you get that, you know, and, you know, this is just with the timing and with changing this whole thing where it takes our appeal, you know, our ability to appeal, or our governmental tool to say, hey, if they're not representing us, we the people, then is there any other steps we can take? And you guys are trying to take that away from us if you go ahead with this vote, okay, to take this this petition away. It's a tongue twister, right? The proposed petition, you know, whatever it is. So I just want you to think about that before you vote, okay? Because this is affecting people's lives, you know, financially and beyond. So please think about that, and thank you very much.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input? Anyone else? Anybody online? Okay, if there is no one else for citizen input, we can go to the next item, which is consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through G as presented.
Second. Motion made and seconded by trustee Warren
Yes.
to approve consent agenda items A through G. Discussion on that motion. Trustee Jan Miller.
I would like to pull item A and also item G as in George.
Okay. So then the motion would be to approve consent agenda items B, C, D, E, F. Any discussion, further discussion on that motion? No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Cutts,
Aye.
trustee Baum,
Aye.
trustee Jane Miller,
Aye.
trustee Pieper, trustee Rick Miller, trustee Kaminsky, village president Walter.
Aye. Takes us to consent agenda item A. Trustee Jan Miller.
Thank you. In our minutes from March 3rd, we had an agenda item, and it was item D as in David. Strategy concerning acquisition of properties located generally at the northeast corner of Mequon and Pilgrim Road in the village center district. That's a hard one to say too. The village board may convene into closed session, et cetera, et cetera. So the village board chose to remain in open session for this item, and trustee Baum recused himself from this item. And the community development director, Retzloff, led the discussion on this item, and Bailey Copeland with Copeland Companies and Phil Cosins with Ailers provided presentations. And the motion was to direct staff to proceed with the closing on all three parcels. Motion by trustee Rick Miller and seconded by trustee Warren. And this passed with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to said yes. No's were trustee Jan Miller, trustee Cutts, and abstain was trustee Baum. So the reason I'm bringing this to our attention is because this is what was presented at the last board meeting. This is what was voted on. And it was for the actual purchase of all three parcels, which I am pretty sure that occurred this past week on March 5th. So I wanted to make that distinction because there is absolutely no vote here in our minutes by this board about a TID.
So the minutes are correct.
Yes.
So point of order?
So the point is,
Point of order.
so the point is
Point of order is
that there was no vote on TIDs.
the minutes don't say that. The minutes are correct.
The minutes are correct.
Okay.
There was no vote on TIDs.
Make a motion to approve item A as presented.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion. No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And opposed, motion carries. Consent agenda item G, trustee Jan Miller.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This is about the ordinance for the Germantown, its new municipal code related to suspension or revocation of an outdoor entertainment permit. So I wanted to ask Attorney Sajak about this. And does this go into effect immediately? And if there's a problem and the permit is revoked, can someone reapply? And is there a waiting period? I'm not sure I read that. So I just wanted clarification, please.
Sure. In terms of when it becomes effective, all ordinances, unless they say otherwise within it. So for example, if we wanted to have something effective not until June, we could say that. But if you don't say that, they're effective the day after publication. So every ordinance gets published, that gets published typically the next week, Madam Clerk. Yeah, and then it would become effective on that next day. We do generally have provisions that prohibit kind of the reapplication after you've been denied or revoked for something. And even if somebody would apply, the fact that we just revoke them would certainly be more than sufficient basis to deny their reapplication if they chose to do it and it slipped through anyway. So.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve item G as presented.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That then takes us to new business. Started with new business item A, award of a contract for the 2025 road program construction to Wolf Paving in the amount of $1,176,115.
I'll make a motion to approve the award of the 2025 road program to Wolf Paving in the amount of $1,176,000.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by trustee Kaminsky. Discussion. Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, they're at Plan Commission at Public Works, our special meeting. We had a 10% contingency added to that, so I want to amend the motion to add the 10% contingency for a total of $1,293,726.50.
Second.
Motion made to amend and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Trustee Pieper.
Is adding a contingency like that normal? Is that always added?
It's normal.
Director.
So I do have a question why, obviously, new business item A and new business item B, we're awarding contracts for roads. Is there, help me understand why we're awarding one to Wolf Paving and one to Payne and Dolan? So in my mind, which I'm not on Public Works, so I don't completely understand why would we would go to two separate companies rather than go to one company and possibly get a discount. I don't know. I don't do roads.
Sure. So the agenda item A is for the road program. That's our annual road program. That's bid out separately from the second item, which is part of the ARIP grant that we're receiving from the state. So there's separate bid requirements there that we have to go through for the state purposes of satisfying the grant.
Okay, so Wolf Paving didn't submit a bid for both of these, right?
They did.
They did.
Yeah.
But Payne and Dolan,
Wolf was low on the road program and Payne and Dolan was low on the Rockfield Road project.
okay. History-wise, who did Pilgrim Road from Mequon to County Line when it was last repaved?
It's been a while.
I know it's been a while, but I don't ever want those people hired again. Ever.
Payne and Dolan.
Was it really?
I don't know.
Don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. I mean, they're one of the bigger ones out there, but who knows? Got to be 20 years.
no.
Not,
Then
not
whoever quoted
redone.
it. Okay.
Yeah, we've used both of these contractors recently. Wolf did the road program last year for us and Payne and Dolan had the road program the year prior. So they've both done good work recently for the village.
All right, no further questions, and there's amendment and a motion on the floor, right?
Motion to amend, correct, to add the contingency.
right.
Further discussion on the motion to amend, trustee Jan Miller.
Can I, this is the regular road program with a bunch of roads and not just two, right?
Correct. Yeah, this is the 2025 road program that addresses the roads that are listed in the write-up. And And I can pull up a list here, but you can also read it in the packet there. There's a portion of Wagon Trail. There's Sylvan, Montgomery, Francis. Those are all part of this package.
Okay, great. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to amend? No further discussion? Since it's money, roll call, please.
Trustee Warren?
Aye.
Trustee Cutts? Trustee Bum?
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Peeper?
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? Village President Walter?
Aye. Motion passes. New business item B, award of a contract to reconstruct Rockfield Road to Payne and Dolan in the amount of $931,369.
Mr. President, that was, I think, just the vote on the amendment.
Well, you're correct. Thank you. Point of order. Yes, back to the motion as amended. Thank you. Further discussion? No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Warren?
Aye.
Trustee Cutts?
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller? Sorry, Trustee Bum.
Aye.
Testing you. Trustee Jan Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Peeper?
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky? Village President Walter?
Aye. Now, new business item B is award of a contract to reconstruct Rockfield Road to Payne and Dolan in the amount of $931,369.
Move approval of the contract to Payne and Dolan for $931,369. Is there contingency added to that or not? Yes, there is.
There is.
You want to give me the correct number? And I'll make that as part of my motion, so we don't have to do the amendment.
The correct number is $1,024,505.90.
That's the number I will include in my motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Trustee Warren. Discussion. Trustee Ball.
With the solar farm that is going up out there, is this going to be coordinated with that so we're not ripping up a brand new road?
Yeah, I mean, it's something now that we're able to proceed with Rockfield Road that we'll want to do some coordination on, whether it's the timing of the actual work or assessing conditions before and after construction with mechanisms for the village to address damage.
Okay. Thank you.
And the ARIP pays back how much of the amount of 1.2 million?
So the ARIP program will pay back 90%. The village and the town will be responsible for the 10%.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Jan Miller.
My question is, wasn't the ARIP more than this, and aren't there two parts? Did I?
Yeah, so the ARIP was awarded for Rockfield Road and for Pleasant View Road. We prioritized getting the Rockfield Road portion of the work out first because there was some stormwater design that needed to happen at the Menominee River crossing on Pleasant View. And we're likely going to break that Pleasant View Road up into two phases to take advantage of current pricing, because on the projects that we're awarding for this year, we've seen some advantageous pricing on asphalt, and we want to take advantage of that. So we're going to bid the northern portion of the Pleasant View Road segment out probably later this spring or summer. And then the southern portion that includes that Menominee River crossing and the modifications that we'll have to do there will likely be next year.
With all due respect, I tend to agree with Trustee Baum. There is supposed to be some sort of construction right off of Rockfield Road. I know Rockfield Road right there is really not a good road, but if you put a new road down and there is heavy construction, you're going to mess it up anyway. And I'm sure there's cost for redoing it. So I would use the ability to flip, those roads and just work on Pleasant View. It's going to take longer, and Rockfield's a straight shot. So, but why put in brand new road and have it destroyed by big semis? I don't understand.
Well, I don't know if the timeline for the solar farm is known, nor is the exact timeline for Rockfield Road known. We'll award the work today, and then we'll get the contract sorted out, establish a pre-con meeting, and then come up with a schedule for the roads. There's coordination likely that will need to be done with the solar farm. But until we know actual schedules, we can't do that coordination.
Oh,
I
well,
think we also have a very good bid here that came in under the price that we were expecting, the construction estimate, and I'd hate to lose that. You mentioned that Rockfield Road is kind of a straight shot, and that's right. I think the contractors saw that as an advantage to them as well. And I think we're lucky based on the current market that we got the prices that we did.
yes, but I understand what you're saying. Is it possible, is Payne and Payne, whatever,
Payne and Dolan.
Dolan, are they awarded the Pleasant View as well then?
Pleasant View, that design has not been completed. The project hasn't been bid.
Oh. So this is just one thing.
This is essentially half of the work that we were awarded under ARIP.
Right. So you haven't even bid out the other road, basically.
Well, we've begun work on it, but it's not complete to the point where we're prepared to bid the work.
If you had to do any work after it was destroyed by a couple of semis, what would it cost? I mean, like a $500,000?
That's a hypothetical. I don't really want to venture down that road and guess, but
but it could happen. So you have a finite amount of money here, right? You have to stay within the budget of this ARIP.
Correct.
Yeah.
Trustee Kaminsky.
We all know the condition of Rockfield Road. It's got to be one of the top 3 worst in the village. I mean, there's plants growing all over in the road. That's how bad it is. I have no problem with moving ahead with this. It's a miracle to get a grant like this, first of all. You get the money, you get a good bid, you get the road done. I don't know why we're assuming that we're going to wreck that road. And, we don't have any clue of when this solar farm is going to come in, really. Could be 2 years, could be 5 years, could be 1 year. We don't know. I mean, this is the logical thing, is to move ahead when somebody gives you money and get it done. Because it's something that's needed doing for a number of years.
Does the ARIP have a sunset date?
We have 2 years to work on the grant.
Okay.
So the idea would be Rockfield Road portion and potentially part of Pleasant View later this year, the rest of it next year.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Cutts?
I know when the solar farm originally came up, there was talk of a road agreement between the town, the village, and solar. Do we know if anything was reached as far as what their responsibility would be if there's damage to the roads?
I know that we were negotiating an agreement before there was a pause in the development, but now with both of these approved, I think that that's something that will need to be revisited.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Trustee Warren?
I think it'd be good for those who aren't in the industry to understand that part of agreements with contractors when they're doing work in your community is that there's haul roads that are identified, and if they damage any of your roads, they're responsible for repairing them. That's why an inventory is done ahead of time of construction, so that we understand the condition that it was, and if any damages does occur, the contractor is responsible for repairing that. I had a question on how the cost share between the village and the town was established.
The cost share between the village and the town was simply how the road segments are assigned in the state database. So there's a state database called Whistler, that contains all of the road segments. And if you just add up the feet across the village and town portions of the road, it was divided up that way. So in the write-up, I think I have the numbers.
Yeah.
Town would pay approximately 43,000 for the road reconstruction, and the village would pay about 50,000.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Further discussion on the motion to approve? No further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Ketz,
Aye.
trustee Baum,
Aye.
trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
trustee Pieper,
Aye.
trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
trustee Kaminsky, village president Walter.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item under new business is item C, memorandum of understanding between the Village of Germantown and the local 4854 of the International Association of Firefighters regarding lateral transfer pay, placement, and promotional pay adjustments. Chief.
Thank you. A few years back, the fire department and the police department both went for approval for lateral transfers to try and recruit more people from the area. With the hiring of the new people from the referendum, we found that the fire department never actually documented that agreement. The police department did. When the fire department went for the agreement, we said we want the same thing as the police department does, and that's what was agreed upon. This is just a document to show that we actually have it in place and in writing what that agreement was.
Board.
I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the village and local 4854 of the International Association of Firefighters as presented.
Motion made and seconded by trustee Rick Miller. Discussion on the motion. Trustee Jan Miller.
Just a quick question, Chief. Was this put into effect and we're just following up with the paperwork?
That is correct.
Okay. Oh, I didn't have my mic on.
Further discussion?
Thanks.
No further discussion? Since it's pay related, does it need roll call?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Ketz,
Aye.
trustee Baum,
Aye.
trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
trustee Pieper,
Aye.
trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
trustee Kaminsky, village president Walter.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Chief. Next item under new business is item D, Village of Germantown Community Development Department and Village Attorney proposed text amendment to Section 17 zoning of the Village of Germantown Municipal Code. To give us more information background on this new business item, we'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzloff. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Wisconsin Legislature adopted Act 2023, Act 16, that created restrictions on the village's zoning authority. Much of those restrictions in Act 2023, Act 16 became effective as of January 1, 2025. The most critical restriction eliminates the village's ability to require more than a simple majority vote to approve a zoning amendment. And consequently, the zoning code needs to be amended to make it consistent with Wisconsin statutes as a result of that Act 16. Amendment number 1 that's proposed removes a provision that requires a favorable vote of 3/4 of the full village board to increase the maximum density in a planned development district. This again, because of Act 2023, Act 16, specifically statute 66-10015, that limits municipal zoning authority to only require a favorable vote of a simple majority to enact a zoning amendment. In this case, with respect to this provision, includes the creation or amendment to a PDD. This amendment means that a simple majority of a quorum of the village board would be required to increase the maximum density in a planned development district. Amendment number 2 removes a provision that provides for protest petitions against zoning amendments. If specific criteria are met, a valid protest petition requires a favorable vote of 3/4 of the full village board to approve the zoning amendment. That's the current provision. Similar to Amendment Number 1, Act 16 creates this section that limits municipal zoning authority to only require a favorable vote of a simple majority to enact a proposed zoning amendment. Amendment Number 3 creates a new section that provides certiorari appeal process provisions with respect to the denial of a conditional use permit, where said process is specified under Section 17.52 of the zoning code. That's also being created under Amendment Number 5. Amendment Number 4 clarifies that a zoning amendment requires a favorable vote of a simple majority of a quorum of the village board, except if the amendment constitutes a downzoning of property. Again, Act 16 creates a provision that limits municipal zoning authority to only require a favorable vote of a simple majority to enact a zoning amendment, unless the amendment is a downzoning, which in this case generally means the decrease of development density of a property or reduces the permitted uses of a particular property, which in that case would require a favorable vote of 2/3 of the village board, unless the owner of the property subject to the downzoning has requested the downzoning or is agreeable to the downzoning, in which case only a simple majority of the board is required. And finally, Amendment Number 5 creates that certiorari appeal process for anyone aggrieved by a decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals. If we want to get into the details of what certiorari means, our village attorney can address that and other questions that I'm sure will come up in our discussion. As alluded to earlier in the public comment section, the Plan Commission discussed this at length. There was some confusion about motions, but ultimately they took a vote and it ended in a 3-3 tie. So the motion to approve the zoning code amendments as drafted failed on that 3-3 vote. And that's where we are today. Thank you.
So it comes forward with no recommendation.
Effectively.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to table this item until such time after the election that we have a full board and that District 4 is represented fully. We have 8 trustees on the board. And I feel when we're doing these kinds of checks. Okay, that's my motion. Table until
Second.
1st of May, whatever that is.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion, motion to table? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Five. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Board,
Here.
trustee Peeper,
Um, attorney.
motion.
You need a motion.
I'm asking him a question about the
Okay.
motion. I need to make the motion in a positive manner, correct?
Generally, yes, that's what Robert's rules contemplates. The reason for that being is if the vote fails, then, right, if the vote fails, then the item just fails itself. Whereas if you make it the opposite, you can't really approve something without a formal vote. So then you have to follow up with.
And that is something I want to be very clear to the audience about. I'm making the motion in favor to pass this, but I am not voting in favor of it. So I'll make a motion to approve. New business item, help me out. D.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by trustee Baum. Discussion, trustee Kaminsky.
Is the state telling us basically We have no choice here. Am I hearing that correctly?
Correct.
So the state is telling us we have to follow the simple majority for these issues that our community development director just told us. I mean, we have to follow them. We have no choice. And so what happens if we don't?
Well, the answer to that, quite simply, is that we would have to, if we were presented with a circumstance where a protest petition was filed and we still had it on the books, you're then faced with the question of, do you follow the state statute, which says that it's not allowed? And to tell the folks, we heard from, in fact, one of the residents today about how, there's effort and time that's associated with doing this. You need to tell them that all of their time is for naught, because we are prohibited, or our hands are tied by the statute, or you choose to ignore the statute and require the higher vote anyway. And if that still if that would fail as a result of that higher vote, in my opinion, you're likely going to get sued, and the circuit court, on a review of that, would dispose of that litigation fairly quickly and simply, in my opinion.
So the key is, like in anything we do in municipal government, we have to follow what the state tells us we have to do. Isn't this, I mean, it's true about anything, like cell towers, for example. Solar farms, we don't have control over that. We are told by the state what we can argue about, what we can dump, and what we can't. We don't have control over a number of things, and this is one of them. And I personally don't think it's a big boogeyman. I really don't. I don't have a problem with it.
I mean, I will say that, the folks here who live on the Landon Road area, in fact, on Friday filed a protest petition objecting to the rezoning, which I don't think has even been filed yet. So, totally premature, but they went through the effort to do it, presumably because they saw this item on the agenda and said, well, we better get it in before they take it away so that it means something. I don't think it matters. In fact, I had a phone conversation just this afternoon with one of my colleagues in another community where they have a very large project that is up for a public hearing tomorrow night. And they're worried that they're going to get a protest petition. And what does that mean? And am I right? Meaning the person I was talking to wanted to know if they were right with their assessment that you can't enforce that protest petition, even if you have it on the local code. And I said, that is my reading of the statute as well. And so it's, we're not the only ones faced with it. The legislature, in all honesty, continues. We've given a couple other examples: solar farms, cell towers. There's 2 pending bills right now that likewise look to limit our authority to regulate things from a zoning level. And so it's something that the state, continually has chipped away at your authority to, control your own local decisions, quite frankly.
And my second bite?
You're still on your first.
I'm on my first. I think that I like what's on the agenda next, the resolution that kind of says, hey, we don't like this. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And we want to file that and let them know. And that's the way you fight something like this. If enough communities do that, maybe someday we'll get some change.
Trustee Pieper.
I just want to make it clear. So there were several amendments on here that were listed. How many?
5.
There are 5. The state is telling us we have to change all 5 of these.
Correct. Basically, the amendments all make our local code conform with what the state requires.
State
And
passed
you
in
said, and if we
2023.
don't do this, we could open ourselves to litigation. You're very familiar with the state of Wisconsin municipalities. How many municipalities have gotten sued because they didn't adapt to this?
Nobody yet, but the lack of the ability to enforce the protest petition only became effective on January 1st of this year. And so even though it was passed back in 2023, it wasn't until January 1st of this year that became effective. And so, to my knowledge, there hasn't been anybody that has. I think there's a good chance that the one that I was just talking about may end up in that circumstance. We'll see what happens. But there just hasn't been time yet for any development to be impacted by it.
Okay, well, still on my first bite, right? and it'll be my last, but don't worry. I think, I'm with you, Terry, that maybe if all of us, little towns and villages and municipalities stick together and kind of say, screw you, state, I'm not voting for this. I'll take my chances and roll my dice with the state.
Further discussion, trustee Baum.
So, in regards to the solar farm, it was very much similar to this, and we resisted the rules that were put in place. We did not follow the state guidelines, and the solar farm was denied. However, the solar farm just came back and went to BOZA, and was it overturned at BOZA? Because we have to follow the state law. So what's going to happen is somebody's going to come forward. We're going to deny it because we're going to hold off and wait for the petition to be
Or it'll
filed.
fail on us not having a supermajority.
Right. And what's going to end up happening is the developer is just going to go to BOZA and BOZA will overturn it like they did in the past.
Which will cost attorney's fees.
Yes. So while I'm not interested in having this done, it's just going to cost us time and money to fight it. So I'm okay with the next agenda item, but for this one, I'll follow the state law and change our codes.
Further discussion, trustee Chan Miller.
I understand what everyone is saying. I don't believe that this is the same as the solar farm or the cell tower. Those are different, bigger entities. We have control over zoning. I think the zoning goes to Plan Commission. Is that right, Trustee Baum?
Yes.
Yes. So I believe that this is something that we need to talk about, and we need to continue to fail this as the Plan Commission did. It is not in our best interest, and we don't right now have a second District 4 trustee. And I have a problem when we have something this important and that this many amendments to our municipal code, and we don't have a full board. That's one of my problems. The other is all of these people here have made it clear that they want to have the voting to be the 7 to 9 on a full board, as well as they want to have the ability to do a protest petition. Now, if this was approved in January, why are we seeing it in March?
So we're late is what you're saying.
We always seem to be late.
Well, there's a very simple answer to that question, which is that in 2017, when the state got rid of it out of the state statute, basically meaning that we didn't have to have it within our code, which is the case before 2017. When that took place in 2017, we came to this body, admittedly different members of this body, but
Sure.
it was this
Some
body.
were the same.
And it was made abundantly clear that we in no way wanted to get rid of the protest petition. It's anti-democratic. It doesn't
Right.
It doesn't have a thing to do with what we have an interest in. And so as a result of that, when this statutory change came in, rather than bringing it forward in 2023 when it was adopted, I said, we'll just wait until it becomes effective and then we'll bring forward the code change and do it at that time. If I had known in 2023 that we would be sitting here arguing about Village Center and Lannon and other significant development things, I would have brought it forward in 2023, and you guys probably would have been in the same boat, telling me we're not interested, bring it back in 2025 once it becomes effective. Because I get it. I do not agree with removing this. I think that it is inconsistent with what the legislature has historically done with zoning and with local control. But this is just another example of the state saying, we know better than you. And it's wrong, but at least from my perspective, you should follow that because that's what the state requires.
Well, you're the attorney,
Right.
but I think that we should, as I said, I think my main concern is we don't have a full board. We are weeks away from filling this board. This board, as in total, unanimously voted to fill the District 4 position, Phil's position, by waiting and then filling it. And I think that when you have these amendment changes, you should have a full board. That's the one thing. And then you've got, I don't know how many people here, 50 people that have been speaking up in the last, how many meetings, that they don't want this. And when are we going to stand up and fight for our residents? I'm sorry. That's what I was elected for. That's what I was elected for. And we can't, these are guidelines. I look at these as guidelines. Are they, you don't, Brian, you said it yourself. You haven't heard of the state coming back and taking us to court, or any municipality. So I say roll the dice.
Mr. President, if I can just,
Administrator.
if I can just take a shot at this. A couple of key things. And first of all, I think it's really important for the folks who are in the room to understand that whatever the village board decides tonight, the state law is a state law. And voting this down and keeping our ordinance the same doesn't change what the state law is. If, and that's, I don't want to mislead anybody, and that's staff's concern, and that's why staff is recommending taking that out of the ordinance, because we don't want to mislead members of the public and allow you to think that you have the ability to do something that under state law, you don't have the ability to do. And that's just part of transparency, I think, in government. If we're not being transparent or honest with the residents, if we keep an ordinance that's in violation of state law. And I, don't typically advocate this strongly for one of these positions, but that is the reality of what we're faced with. I think for the sentiment that we want to fight against the state, and I agree with the village attorney, I agree with Trustee Jan Miller, this is tiresome that the state is continuously stripping power away from municipalities. And I'm going to say it very bluntly and candidly, because our state representatives are listening to the lobbyists from the developers, from the people who are financing development and who are profiting from development. And they're not listening to you. And quite honestly, that's who you need to be talking to if you don't particularly like this change in the state statute. The village board does not have the authority to override the state. And with that, I'm sorry, I'll stop, but I did want to respond to that thing about fighting the state. The best opportunity we have to do that is a resolution and just being transparent. Even if the board does not change the ordinance, the state law stands.
Trustee Warren.
I couldn't have said it better. But I wanted to respectfully disagree with Trustee Miller. This is not the battle to fight. And I agree with Administrator Krecklow that we would be misleading the residents if we had something in the books that went against state law, misleading people, misguiding people, and losing resources and time. I don't like this either. I hate this. But this is not the battle that we can fight now. I don't want to waste resources and time and money trying to fight this. I think we've already learned our lesson with the solar farm. I just don't want to go through that again. If you want to fight this, start a grassroots effort. Write your senator, write your representatives. That's where it's got to fight, where you got to start the fight. Try to go against these strong lobbyists, but it's not for us to fight that battle at this level. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Retzlaff.
I think it's important to point out that the one thing the Plan Commission was resolute on and voted unanimously in favor of, and that was sending a resolution opposing the overreach from the state over local zoning authority, which is a resolution that's the next agenda item for you to consider.
Further discussion? The only thing that I would add is it is overreach, and I do agree with the resolution. The state has a great habit of taking our power away at a local level. But each and every one of us stood up when we took our oath of office and we said that we would uphold the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of the state, and the ordinances of this village. Constitution of the state says that the House and the Senate pass laws and create laws and institute laws of this state. That's in the Constitution of the state. If you go against this, you're going against your oath. Further discussion? No further discussion? Roll call vote.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Cutts,
No.
trustee Baum,
Aye.
trustee Jane Miller,
No.
trustee Peeper,
Nope.
trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
trustee Kaminsky, village president Walter.
Aye. Next item under new business is item E, a resolution opposing the erosion of local home authority and requesting the return of local control over protests of zoning change.
Make a motion.
Motion made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Kaminsky.
My only comment is a repeat of what I said before. This is the one way we have to fight this. You signed this resolution saying you're overstepping, we don't like it, stop it. And this is all we've got.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item is new business item F, presentation on tax increment districts in Germantown. Village Administrator.
Thank you. And this is just a presentation for discussion and information only. And I'm bringing this forward. It's every few months we bring some of these topics up as kind of an educational opportunity, both as a refresher for the trustees as well as for the community. And one of the things I want to point out before I get into the discussion here is the fact that I'm making this presentation. I'm not at all advocating for the use of tax increment districts. I'm trying to factually describe how they work, how they can be used, and correct, to be candid, some of the misinformation that's out there on social media and other statements that people have made that are factually incorrect, and provide the accurate information both for the board and for the members of the public. So I've pulled together in this presentation a number of slides, some that were presented by Ailers at a recent village board meeting, some others that I borrowed of some information from Economic Development in Washington County from a while back, and some of my own previous presentations. So what is tax increment financing? There's two acronyms that kind of refer to the same thing, TIF and TID. TIF is tax increment financing. That's basically the tool. It describes how the village goes forward with paying for improvements or infrastructure improvements, or in some cases, developer incentives related to new development. It is one of the only tools that the village has for economic development. And I think, if you look at other states, I was in Iowa this weekend for a volleyball tournament and saw a lot of economic development that the city of Bettendorf, Iowa is doing with tools that the state of Iowa grants for their municipalities to use that are not TID, that the state of Wisconsin has chosen not to delegate to municipalities in our state. So it is the only real tool that municipalities have to promote economic development. And the way that it does that is by capturing incremental property tax revenue from the growth in the tax base in a specific defined area, and then using that for improvements within that area. So this is a chart that shows how the increment works, and I think maybe corrects some of the misinformation that is out there related to tax increment districts. So when a tax increment district is formed, there is, and we prepare the reports, we put together the information, there is a baseline property value. In some cases, like for example, the TID out north of Holy Hill Road, that baseline property value is very low. In that case, I think it was, maybe a little over $100,000 in farmland. In other cases, the baseline property value is significantly higher than that. But whatever the case, during the life of the TID, that baseline property value, the taxes related to that baseline property value remain with the other taxing jurisdictions. So if there is a baseline property value of $10 million within a TID, the school property tax rate for the life of the TID gets charged against that $10 million baseline property value, and the school district continues to collect that amount of money for the life of the TID. The same is true for the county as well as MATC. What the tax increment receives, I'm sorry, there's a...
I do have a question on baseline property value. Is that the assessed value when the TID is created?
That's correct.
So it's the assessed value as it is right now?
Correct.
If a TID was created.
If a TID, if we're talking about the proposed TID 10.
Equalized value.
I'm sorry, equalized
Equalized
value.
value.
Equalized value. Thank you. Which, just as for background, is the difference between equalized value and assessed value is the state calculates an equalized value rate for each municipality that is their estimate of what the assessed value of properties are as opposed to the actual market value. So for right now, the equalized value ratio for the village of Germantown is about 103%. So the state is saying that our assessed values are about 3% on average higher than what actual market value is.
So the taxes that are currently paid on that property stay with the taxes that go to the general fund?
That go to, not to our
I'm
general.
sorry, go to the four taxing.
Go to the four taxing jurisdictions, yes. And that would, if the rates go up for some reason, they would continue to, they would see an increase in what that dollar amount is.
Can I ask a question, Mr. President?
Absolutely.
To
Trustee
follow
Kretz.
up on what Trustee Miller just asked, say, take for example, Flower Source. And it's obviously not being used, it's in disarray, it's gonna be ripped down. So they're still paying the property tax on that as though it was still there?
Well, they are not. The former owners are not. At this point.
Somebody is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if this goes
was.
forward with development, if this goes forward with development, and it isn't necessarily, it's not related to specific parcels. It's related to the overall dollar amount of the
Gotcha.
TID.
Yeah.
So, it's the total baseline property, when the county does their property tax closing process each year, the county does a calculation that includes this baseline property value. They apply the tax rate to that baseline, and they include that in the check that the village cuts to the school district, for example. So this is a provision that holds the other taxing jurisdictions harmless for the amount of property taxes that they're collecting right now. They don't lose anything going forward. So what the tax increment district does collect is the increment, the growth in the value of the properties that take place as a result of the development. So for another example here in Germantown, we have tax increment District 8, which is north of Holy Hill Road. That was a tax increment district that was created in 2018. It funded about $15 million worth of infrastructure projects, extending sewer and water up from the intersection of Freistadt and Goldendale Road up into that district north of Holy Hill Road, creating the roads that you see within that business park, as well as some of the other improvements in the area around today. We borrowed, we issued bonds to pay for that, and all of the debt service related to those bonds is paid for out of the incremental property taxes that are collected out of tax increment District 8. And that is the way that those tax increment districts work. Just to clarify something that came up during public comment, it would be nice if we were able to see, for example, in today, all of the development that took place up there without having to create a TID. However, it's for those of you who were here during that process, that development would not have taken place if we had not extended sewer and water up into that business park. That was too large of an expense for the developers to take on for themselves, especially for the first development that took place. So the only other option that the village board had available at that time would have been to have the utilities and the property taxpayers pay directly for those improvements. But then that's something that people would have seen on their water and sewer bills or on their property tax bills. Those are really the only two options that communities have for funding this type of development. Now, when all of those obligations related to the TID are closed or are satisfied, then the TID is closed and that property value all goes onto the tax base. And again, for some of the trustees who have been on the board a little bit longer, we closed TID 4 back in, and I don't have it on a later slide, 2021 or so. And we saw a real reduction in residential property tax rates that year because that property value went directly into the tax base and helped to offset other costs of other operating costs that the village had. I'll keep moving around. There's another important component to this, and it's called the but-for test. And this gets back to the point of, well, why do we have to create TIDs? Why can't we just have all this development without TIDs? Well, one of the processes we have to go through and that Ailers and our attorneys go through is looking at, is it reasonable to say that the development that's being proposed would not happen but for the funding from the tax increment district, either for infrastructure improvements in the area or for incentives or things to attract the developers? If the answer to that question is yes, it would happen, it would happen without the TIDs, then we cannot form a TID. The TIDs cannot be put in place. However, if the answer to that to the but-for question is no, then we are able to move forward with the TID. And that question has been asked and answered on every TID that is active for the village of Germantown. So one of the other questions here is, and this goes, I guess, to further expand on the but-for question. The but-for question is not asking whether any development would occur. The but-for question is asking if the development that's being proposed would occur without the TID. So it might be, and in the case of the proposal for TID 10, there would be some type of development there. It could be storage units or oil change places have been proposed there in the past. But the type of development that is under consideration would not be viable there financially without the creation of a tax increment district. So here's another myth that comes up, is that tax increment financing increases property taxes. So, the municipality, Germantown, all the other taxing jurisdictions levy our property taxes through our annual budget process. That total amount is divided by the total property value with the TID out to calculate the property tax rate. And then that rate is applied to all of the property owners, including the property owners within the tax increment district. So that is, they're paying property taxes just like everyone else is. The only difference is where that funding goes. So for the taxpayers within the TID, that incremental amount of what they paid goes back into the TID to pay for TID-related expenses. For everybody else, that money goes into the general fund to pay for general village expenses. I also want to note that there were some legislative changes that take effect here in 2025, passed in the last state budget, that close what some people have considered to be a loophole in tax increment districts, and to basically further limit the ability of municipalities to increase property taxes to fund operations. So previously, under the old law, as you're all well aware, you could increase your property tax levy based on net new construction, and included in that net new construction calculation was 100% of net new construction within the tax increment district. So you could, now this village board, in I think 6 out of the 7 budgets that I've been a part of with the board, you've decided not to do that. You haven't gone up as far as you can. But this would say, the new law says that going forward, you can only increase it by 90% of the construction value within TIDs. The second change is that when a TID was closed, the previous law allowed you to take 50% of the property value that was being moved from the TID into the general assessment pool, and increase your property taxes by that 50%, which can be a pretty significant jump. Again, when TID foreclosed, that was not something that the village board exercised, but you could have. Under the new state law, you can only take 10%. So whereas in the old state law, you could have increased by 150% of the net new construction within the TID, this limits it to only a total of 100%, 90% when the construction occurs, and 10% when the TID is closed. There is an exception to that as kind of an incentive for municipalities to work to close TIDs earlier, and that is that if the TID closes early, that 10% becomes 25%. Here's a general list of and this is specifically related to some of the village center type developments that have taken place in the communities that are listed here. Pewaukee's downtown, Oak Creek's Drexel Square project. If you go up to West Bend to their farmers market, their Riverwalk, that type of thing. The city of Cedarburg downtown, what Village of Mequon has done, and Spur 16, what the Village of Sussex and Grafton have done in their downtown areas. The Corners in Brookfield are all examples of projects that were funded using tax increment financing to promote that type of development. I would also say, just aside from that type of development, Richfield, Jackson, Slinger, Hartford, West Bend, all use tax increment district financing for business parks. And in some cases, not all of those communities, but some of those communities also use it for residential development. So this is a tool that most municipalities of, I'd say, more than 5,000 people across the state use to fund infrastructure and promote development within their communities. Other examples in Germantown, I'll go through this fairly quickly, but TIDs 1 through 5 were created in the village of Germantown in the 1980s and 90s. The last of those TIDs closed in 2019. I think it's important that as you look around the community and you think about tax increment districts, those tax increment districts added about $288 million to Germantown's property tax base. If that development had not occurred, the property tax bill for a $425,000 home would be about $700 higher than it was last year. So if it weren't for the development that took place in those TIDs, historically, property taxes on residential homes in Germantown would be much higher than they are today. I'll just kind of show where these were, and you can kind of picture where the development was and what they add to the community. The first TID was established in 1986. It was north of Landon Road, right off of the interstate, and has seen a lot of office space and some retail space there that adds a lot to the community. TID 2 was on the corner, let me say that'd be the southeast corner of Freistadt and River Lane, was established to promote some commercial and industrial development along the rail spur there, and is one of Germantown's larger companies, both in terms of employers and property taxes that they pay today. TID 3 was a larger industrial park south of Freistadt Road and east of River Road. And that was established in 1989, closed in 2013. And that's, again, some of the larger employers and property taxpayers, utility customers in the village. Probably many of our residents work for these companies. TID 4 is on more towards the east side of town, south of Mequon Road, the Germantown Business Park. This included and was opened in 1994, closed in 2019. This included businesses from, Airgas, Sterling Pharma, and I could go on a long list of organizations, businesses that are important to the community that are there because of the TID that was utilized to create that business park. TID 5 was a smaller project. This is really the Sendix area, and it was used to make sure that the village had a grocery store in that area to attract Sendix, which is, I think, one of the real quality of life items here in the village of Germantown. So it was used for a slightly different purpose than some of the others that were mentioned, but, also provide some benefits to the communities.
Cleaned up a brownfield too, from a dry cleaning business that was there that dumped a lot of their chemicals into the back, out the back door.
We have 4 active TIDs. The first is TID 6 that was formed in 2014. It had a base value at the time of about $2.8 million. The value on January 1st of 2024, so over a year ago, was $52.1 million. And that at this point, that TID is I believe, I'm not sure if construction is complete on the last building, but it's, for all intents and purposes, built out and filled with expected closure in 2032.
Which is 9 years early.
Which is 9 years early. Every one of these TIDs that I go through is expected to close before the legally allowed closure date. TID 7 started as JW Speaker to fund their expansion, the new building that they put up about 6 years ago. It had a base value of $9.9 million. The incremental value, the increase has been about $23.7 million. It was amended to include the area south of Holy Hill Road. There are the Capstone Quadrangle development. There is a third building that they're starting construction on this year. When that's completed, that will increase that incremental value and could help to further accelerate the expected closure.
Which right now is projected at 8 years earlier.
Correct. TID 8, I talked about a little bit here earlier. That's the Gateway Business Park north of Holy Hill Road. It's created in 2018. There was a base value of $640,000. As of January 1st of 2024, that incremental value was $200 million with expected closure in 2032, which makes it
13 years early.
13 years early than the statutory allowed limit. And that number is continuing to increase. And I think by closure, I would estimate we'll probably add $300 million to the overall Germantown tax base. TID 9 was a little bit different tax increment district that was created in 2022 over on the Donges Bay and Wazaki area. It had an initial value of 188,000. This one was created because that tax increment district paid for the extension of utilities, the reconstruction of Donges Bay Road, and the construction of, now I forgot the name of the road going into Town 9 Road, leading into the DPW building. So the TID paid for those improvements that we would have needed anyways for the new Public Works building, but instead they were paid by the TID and not put on people's property tax bills. That TID was extended twice, one to capture some additional increment related to the Stonecast expansion on the west side of the DPW facility, and then more recently to the Sterling Pharma expansion, which is they're still going through their corporate approval processes. If that expansion does come to fruition, it will not only be in large part because the contribution from the TID, the revenue sharing from the TID, made it more competitive with other facilities that they were looking at expanding in other parts of the United States and Europe, but it will also accelerate the closure of TID 9 from 2036 to potentially earlier than that.
Is that a 20-year TID?
Yes.
All right, so then it'll close 6 years early.
And then finally, the proposed TID 10, if it is created, would be in 2025 at the intersection of Mequon and Pilgrim Road. The base value is $22.2 million. The estimated incremental value that would be added would be $84.6 million with an expected closure out in 2049. That is, I believe, a conservative, but time will tell. It depends a lot on how quickly development occurs and how those cash flows materialize. And that is an item for discussion later on in the agenda. Question?
Okay, Trustee Warren.
So Steve, I guess 10 is unique because it involves a residential component. Maybe you could speak to, does that mean there's more risk, or what are the other concerns or variables that come into play? Because residential is now, we never did a TID with residential component before, correct?
That's correct. None of the previous Germantown TIDs have included residential. It is something that, clearly is allowable under state statute and is used by many other communities. If I go back to that slide that showed all of the downtown projects, every one of those included a residential component. I think so. I don't think I would characterize it as having more risk. I guess I would say it is a different type of risk. There are downturns in residential markets like there are downturns in commercial and industrial markets. I think there are also similar ways to mitigate those risks. These are decisions the board has yet to make, but what we've done in the past to minimize risk to the village and these other tax increment districts is when we've entered into development agreements, with developers, we have included in there minimum requirements for increment. So in other words, if the developer doesn't create a level of increment that's necessary to pay off the obligations of the TID, then they're obligated to make up that difference to the village. So those are the types of things we've negotiated in the past, and we probably would negotiate again in the future.
Other questions? Trustee Cutts?
A question related to, it's your slide 10 on the legislative changes. You mentioned the 25% value if it closes early. Is that also, you're setting the date, like a projected date at the beginning, and it has to fall within a certain range. So if we would extend it, then you don't get that 25%, correct?
I believe that what that refers to is if it closes before the legally allowed deadline. So TIDs, depending upon the type of TIDs, state law only allows them to remain open somewhere between 20 and I think, is it 27 years?
27.
27 years. So that change in the state law would provide an incentive for communities to close it before the legally allowed deadline. That's something that Germantown has been doing anyways. But to be, what some communities are doing is they're using tax increment districts because if you fund projects out of tax increment districts, they're not on residents' property tax bills. So in order to keep the cost of infrastructure improvements off of property tax bills, they'll instead have the TID pay for more of those infrastructure improvements, especially within the half-mile radius of the TID, and a way, as a way to keep their property tax bills down. The state is trying to reduce that practice by creating an incentive for communities to close their TIDs earlier than the statutory allowed maximums.
Okay, and then a question on TID 7. For a while, JW Speaker did not meet certain goals that you were just talking about. Have they caught up on that?
They have not, and that is an item that the village attorney and I we've had conversations with them on that. We're due for another one.
Their developers agreement said they must pay whatever they didn't make up for what they were going to be able to put in there as part of their developers agreement.
And they haven't made that so far, so they owe the village money?
They owe the village money.
They've been paying.
They've been paying their regular, but they haven't met their development goals of what they were going to put in for the amount of buildings. So as it was supposed to grow in assessed value, they haven't met that as part of their developers agreement.
So
How long have they been, I guess, behind, for lack of a better word?
The agreement, if I remember correctly, had 2024 as their deadline for meeting that.
And you're working to try to get that, or where are we at with that?
We have had multiple meetings with them just to let them know that this was coming, and yes, and we are due for another meeting with them to start the process of number one, either collecting that amount, or number two, if they have a different proposal that they would like to make, then that would be something that ultimately we would bring to the village board. So, they had mentioned that as a possibility in some of the previous discussions, that they might be looking to make a request to the board to renegotiate that and restructure it in a way that would be beneficial to them, and maybe offer some things to the village. And without getting too far into the details of that, the village also has some obligations back to JW Speaker in the future. So the way the development agreement was structured, they had to guarantee increment. They paid for some of the public road, sewer, and water improvements. And then the development agreement also stated that we would pay them back for those at towards the end of the life of the TID. So they have an obligation to us, and we have an outstanding obligation to them.
We looped water in that area, so they paid for that looping.
All right, thank you.
Is that all your?
Sorry, and I'm trying to go quickly. I know we've got that was it. So
Okay,
that was.
other questions? Trustee Jan Miller.
I just wanted to follow up on that TID number 7. It seems to me that we've been talking about them not making their obligation for close to 3 years now. And it was always coming up the next year. So I think we need to start collecting, because they're not due to close until 2036. So we got 7 years. So the last report that I saw, when they're not meeting their obligation, it's close to $250,000, right? Am I right? Or close?
I don't remember exactly what the number was, so I hate
Right.
to, it was a significant amount of money, and it is a dollar amount that changes every year as well, because, you know, the value of the property appreciates, and that, and they come closer to what that target was.
But they haven't met it, so.
Right, but if they're willing to offset what they owe versus what we owe them, that's something this board could consider for payments that would have to occur down the road.
Down the road?
Yeah, by us to them.
Well, we don't have to pay them till 2036.
Right, but we could offset that so that we wouldn't have to pay them at all. That's up
What
to
is,
the board.
what do we, it was a deal that we would pay for the water?
It's part of a negotiation that could be discussed and this board could consider. It's not a deal of any kind. It's a possibility.
I thought you said it was in the developer's agreement that we had to pay them.
It is, but it's not in a developer's agreement that we can trade one for the other. That would be outside of developer's agreement as part of negotiation. Developer's agreement is very clear as to how it's going to work. But if
So-
we're going to offset future costs for ourselves down the road, it's something to consider. Or you can consider it not.
I think we should consider getting money that they owe now. Also, I wanted to bring up the fact that about 3 years ago or so, the statement was, we don't do any TIDs, residential TIDs. We're just doing industrial manufacturing, blah, 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 blah. And now here we are on the cusp of looking at a proposal for a TID. And I've heard from everyone that has commented to me. I haven't had anyone come to me and say, could we open a TID, please? And I don't think that any of the visioning sessions that are touted to be neighborhood sessions, which nobody got an invitation for this particular one.
Which one?
This Mequon Pilgrim. No one got an invitation, a card saying, you're in this area and we want you to come.
That's
and
because there wasn't one done. Yeah, there'd be
It's
one
not
for
a
public
public
hearing, but
hearing,
there
it's a
hasn't been a
neighborhood-
neighborhood meeting done. You're
I'm not
stating
talking
something
about-
that hasn't occurred because it hasn't been said. Oh, whatever, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if it is written, but I think that having a neighborhood meeting and understanding what the needs and what the residents want around that area, what the possibilities are, really, really is important. And I think when you're taking 40 people and taking their information and putting it up as gospel, and nobody said that they wanted a TID in those meetings. No one. Very few, very few. Let's put it that way. So I don't know if we ever got the results for any of those visioning sessions in a data point. All of the presentations had slides where you couldn't read anything. It was so microscopic and blurry, you couldn't read the results. So I would like to have results, and I would like to have like a neighborhood meeting to consider something like this, because I think it's a risk. And the other thing is, we have bought those properties. We have gone ahead and bought the properties. And
With village
that
board
wasn't with the village money, and we
Village
did,
board approval,
right, the majority of the village board approved it.
right.
And so we did the exact same thing to Grossnick, and that's been sitting idle for a year. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's a little more than a year. It's around a year.
Mhm.
And I look at that as a waste. Just a
What would you
waste
like
of
to see there?
property. No, you
What would-
told
What would
us.
you like to see there?
No, you know what, Dean?
I'm
You
answering your
said,
question.
you said that you didn't want to see a parking lot there, that we would block it from Gales. So if there wasn't any vision to it, then what are we doing with it?
No, what we said is we wanted control of it so we could have better decision of
Now
what would
we're-
be put there.
Now we've become a property owner. We own Grossnick's, Flower Source, the other small lot, and now Ascension.
What's the other?
And what's the point? We don't have plans for any of them. And they weren't cheap. So 2.4 million plus 5 million.
Is this in regards to the TID or a question? for
Yes,
Steve
it's in the-
regards to his presentation?
It's in regard to
'Cause
the
if it's in
TID.
regards to TID, you can wait until the resolution ratifying an amendment in the scope of services,
It's-
and it would be more
it's about
proper
the-
for that discussion than it is for questions
Well,
on the
it's-
presentation.
It's about his presentation. There are new rules for opening TIDs now, correct?
Mhm.
And I was told,
Not for opening TIDs, no.
well, there are new regulations for a TID, correct? The percentages have changed.
No, those percentages are related to net new construction, the calculation. of net new
Okay.
construction
Taxes.
and for property
Okay,
tax
for
levy limits.
the tax purposes. So aren't there, one of the parameters I thought was you really, the TID is for creation and then you buy the properties. And we bought the properties and now you think according to the state regulations, we can create a TID. That's my question.
Question is better presented in item H than it is under this topic. It's more relevant under item H.
Can you? So you're not going to answer. I'll ask it
I
again.
don't understand the question.
Of course.
I can answer,
Go ahead.
like, Mr. President. Yes, the village does not need to create the TID before properties are purchased. And that is something I think in previous presentations that Ailers has made, they talked about that as well. And it is not an unusual practice that communities sometimes do purchase the properties first and then create the TIDs later,
Oh.
and state law does allow that.
She's not through yet.
I'll save my other questions for the next component.
Thank you. Trustee Pieper, you have a question?
I just want to confirm that this was put on the agenda for presentation only. This is not an action item, correct?
No, but there is questions allowed.
Okay, that's fine, but I make a motion to take item H out of order and put it above item G and move on to that one. Because that's where discussion like this is relevant.
No,
No other questions for Steve? Before we entertain that motion? All right, if there's no other questions for Steve on his item F, then the motion has been made to take item H as the next item under new business.
we have to vote on it.
And we have a second?
Yes.
We have, who has the second?
Terry.
Trustee Kaminsky has the second. Discussion on the motion. Trustee Cutts.
I am against moving item H before G because I think we should address the Germantown School District's resolution and their concerns with the TID.
Can I speak?
Yeah, we have further discussion.
To actually move item H above G to give the school board time to finish their meeting and join in on our audience. That was my intention for that.
President Walter.
Further discussion. Trustee Chan Miller.
So unfortunately, the school district, Jolene and Terry, the school district has their board meeting as well tonight.
Right.
So the resolution is about the meeting that President Walter and Administrator Krecklow and other trustees, such as Trustee Baum, Trustee Cutts, and myself went to last Tuesday,
Right.
March 11th. And I think it's important, if you read it, that there is a pause. So it is important to do it in the order that is on this agenda. Did you read the resolution?
Yes, I watched the entire meeting.
Great.
I read through the entire packet. I made several phone calls to several board members. I had hours and hours
Village,
of discussion.
school board members, correct?
This is out of order. I did this intentionally to let the school board finish their meeting so they could come here if they wanted to and watch this happen live.
You made several calls to school board members, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Are they going to make it?
Well, I'm not watching the school board meeting right now, am I?
We have a motion on the floor.
But this further delays getting to that item on the agenda to give them more time to wrap that, or to finish their meeting and come here, if they wanted to. I'm not saying they need to, but I'm trying to allow them that option.
But the, of
Trustee Chan Miller.
I believe, we need a vote on both of them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And it's
But
important to
Item F
understand.
was not an action item. And the questions you had were relevant to item H. So that's why I made a motion to take H and put it above G to allow the school board meeting to finish and your questions to be answered by them because it is prevalent under an action item, item H. I'm trying to help you, Jan.
What they're saying in item F is an opportunity to, that
That was not an action item. F was not.
Item G. Item F is the presentation. Item G is the school district
school
resolution.
district.
Yes, that's an action item.
Yes, or,
H is an action item. G is for information.
okay, so
sorry.
you want,
My mistake. I was wrong.
You guys,
I think she got her letters wrong. What did you want to make?
you wanted H next?
I wanted,
Your motion was for
yes, I wanted
H to go ahead of G.
correct.
Okay? That's what the motion was. And seconded by trustee Kaminsky. We're on discussion. I think you guys are beyond your 2 bites.
I'll shut up right now, promise.
Further discussion on the motion. Trustee Cutts.
Well, I just went online and the school board is still meeting. They just went into closed session.
They're almost done.
Oh.
No?
No.
Really? How long have we got?
I don't know.
Hey, it's not
No.
open discussion, guys. I don't know. I don't know. You've got a motion on the floor. Can we please decide on the motion?
Repeat the motion.
Motion is to take item H ahead of item G. As we'll take item H as the next item of new business.
Oh, no.
Further discussion on that motion. Trustee Cutts, you have the floor unless you. Okay. Further discussion. And all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, raise your hands. Motion fails. Item G,
Get everybody.
raise your hands if you said no.
It's easier for me to who's the voting aye. Just
It's just Terry and Jolene.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Motion fails. Back to the agenda, item G, Germantown School District Resolution concerning the Village Center project. Village Administrator, just to give us some background.
Am I allowed to be part of this or not?
Okay, the other flash drive, I think.
Obviously, it's up to you, but we've discussed where you're at, and my recommendation would be for the same reasons that this is not.
Use myself.
Because it says Village Center.
Yeah.
Village Administrator.
The village attorney is opening up a presentation here. But I will start off by saying, as has been stated, the village president and I attended a village board meeting.
School board meeting.
I'm sorry, school board meeting. We attend many village board meetings. Where we did talk about the potential development, yes, that's the one, on Pilgrim and Mequon. And we did listen to some discussion and concerns, a presentation by the superintendent of schools, and then the discussion that the school board had related to the resolution that you see in your packet. I did do some research over the past few days. You know, we received the resolution on Wednesday, and to try to get a better understanding of their concerns, to provide some additional information to the board, and then to go through the timeline and potential implications of pausing or delaying, and what might work, what might not work, so that you're informed when you make this decision.
Yep.
I'll begin by summarizing my understanding of the concerns that the school board had related to the potential development at Pilgrim and Mequon.
Are we going to get into the actual presentation from the school board?
I don't have a copy of the presentation the superintendent gave. So I saw it on Tuesday night, but I was not given a copy of it.
It was in the email.
No, there was a resolution in the email. There was not a presentation.
There was also a link, I thought.
The link was also to the resolution. So one of the issues that the school board is facing, and that presents them with a number of challenges, is the turnover in residents in the apartment buildings in the MacArthur School boundary area, and particularly the swings that they see between what they see as enrollments, projected enrollments in June, and then actual enrollments in September. Not necessarily at the overall enrollment for the entire school, but specifically between grade levels. So they might in June think that they're going to have 42 kids in third grade, so they think they need to have 2 classes. And then when September rolls around, they have 28. And that makes it difficult for them to plan and manage their operations at the school. And it does have a negative financial impact on the school district. One of the concerns that they expressed during the meeting was that if there was additional high-density residential development within the MacArthur School area, that would exacerbate the problem. They have, as they mentioned in the resolution, there are 2 studies that they undertook earlier this year. The first was a facility study, which looked at each one of the school buildings, elementary schools, Kennedy Middle School and Germantown High School, to look at capacity and current enrollment to determine where they have available capacity. One of the findings of that study, which is complete, is that the MacArthur School does not currently have a significant amount of excess capacity overall. They also have undertaken a baseline enrollment projection study, along with a study that study also looks at the impacts of new housing. That study is underway. They don't have a set deadline for completion, but they indicated that, likely late April, potentially sometime in May, that study would be completed.
That's the next question.
Terry?
So on bullet 3, you said they don't have capacity? Because on that bullet, it says they do.
Does not, I'm sorry.
Does
if there's a
currently.
typo in there. It should say does not currently have
Okay.
capacity. Thank you for catching that. Like I said, I put this together this afternoon. So the request, and this is a direct quote from the resolution, is that the Village of Germantown not take any action to approve or permit any advancement of the Village Center project or otherwise allow the projects to move forward until such time as the Germantown School District's enrollment and facility use studies have been completed and the district has had sufficient time to analyze the studies. So I tried to get some additional information here to try to get a sense of where we are and how the proposed development at Mequon and Pilgrim, could impact the areas of the school district's concerns. So one key question is what is happening in Germantown with baseline enrollment projections? One problem that the school district could face is enrollment in excess of capacity, but another potential problem, which is not unlikely, is declines in enrollment, which could, and this is my opinion, this is my statement, which could be just as damaging, potentially more damaging to the school district finances than having to deal with a shortage of capacity. And some of the data that's available online, Germantown is a relatively old community, 10% older than the Metro Milwaukee average based on 2023 U.S. Census data. Birth rates in Germantown are low. They're 20% lower than Metro Milwaukee and Wisconsin averages based on 2023 U.S. Census data, and that birth rate is declining. The birth rate in Wisconsin in the year 2000 was 12.9 births per 1,000 women. In 2022, it had declined steadily down to 10.1 live births per 1,000 women. And that's from the Wisconsin Department of Human Health Services. So, with with the same number of women in a community, that would mean that enrollments would decline over time.
I find that Roffer's study for Cedarburg, Watertown, and Tosa.
So I found these three studies. I Googled Rofers and Wauwatosa, Rofers and Cedarburg, and Rofers and Watertown. And I was able to find links to them just on Google. The Cedarburg study, I actually couldn't find a link to the exact study, but there was an article in the Ozaukee County newspaper on it.
So I know the University of Wisconsin-Madison did very specific studies regarding student yield factors and data, and very recently as well. Honestly, I would like to look into that, and I really think we need to respect the school board, and I'm going to make a motion that we accept this resolution.
Can he finish his?
Sure, I made a motion.
Go ahead, finish your presentation.
I'll second.
So, Rofers has done a lot of these studies for different municipalities. I was able to get information from three of them, and I won't go through all of these numbers. You can read the charts, but I think one of the key points is that, and this was somewhat surprising to me, that there was a much higher rate of children coming into a school district based on single-family housing than on market rate multifamily housing. So for market rate multifamily, in the three examples we have here for Cedarburg, they projected that each unit of market rate multifamily housing would generate 0.05 children. So there would be one child for every 20 units of housing. And Watertown, they said it was one child for every 50 units of housing, and Wauwatosa was one child for every 20 units of housing. So when you heard that there were things in presentation stated that there would be six new students, well, the number of units is projected to be between 300 and 400 units. So at the low end, using if Germantown's rates come in similar to some of these other communities, at the low end, that could mean that there would be six new students between the ages of kindergarten and 12th grade. At the high end of that range, at 400 units of housing, at the higher rates of students, it could be as high as 20 school-age students from kindergarten through 12th grade. The other issue to try to address was the transience of the MacArthur school population. I think it's important to kind of identify and recognize that that is an issue that is largely driven by apartments that were built in the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s. And are, older apartments of a different style and usually typically a different floor plan. Many of those apartments are 2 or 3 bedroom apartments, which probably would not be the case in the development that's being proposed. And so that there are some differences there. I had asked the superintendent of schools if I could get a copy of the scope of the ROFR study to see if this was something that was within the scope of the study that was being conducted. I read through it here at the beginning of the meeting. The study does include as its scope the expected turnover rates for single-family housing. It did not mention anything related to studying what the turnover rates would be in any related to students in any new multifamily housing. So it does not appear to me, and I could be wrong on this, but based on my reading of the scope, that this issue would be addressed in the ROFR study that the school district is conducting. One of the ways that I think we could get information related to this issue and to try to address it would be through the RFP process that would be sent out to developers in the future. Other impacts on school finances, and I want to be clear, this is not stating anything from the school district to the superintendent. I clarified with the superintendent of schools on Friday that he did not state in his presentation that there would be any loss of revenue related to the development as far as the school district, general state revenues or property tax revenues. But I know that has come up in some of the public comments in the past and again in social media. Just a quick overview of how school revenue calculations work. The state of Wisconsin sets an annual per pupil revenue amount each year. And the school district starts out by taking the number of students that they have and multiplying it by that state provided number, and that sets a revenue cap that they're not allowed to collect revenue above and beyond that cap. Then one of the other primary factors is the state equalized value aid that is provided through the Department of Public Instruction. That revenue source, and then other revenue sources, other grants, other aids, which are smaller, are deducted from that revenue cap, and the property tax levy is set. And I did confirm with the Legislative Fiscal Bureau that TIDs do not affect those state equalized value calculations. So that would not, a tax increment district with residential or without residential for that matter, would not have an impact on those school revenue sources. So Germantown School District would receive the full amount of revenue for any students who happen to live in the tax increment district. They would not be harmed financially by the tax increment district. I thought it was important to go through the schedule as it currently stands.
Point of order.
So
This is supposed to be the presentation from the school district.
No, it doesn't. It's not an action item. He's going through what,
This is an action item. Most definitely is.
This,
you said earlier it wasn't.
No, this item to adopt the resolution from the school board, it is an action item.
Or such.
Yes, so
As the board desires to take.
either we can take no action or we can take action.
Can we finish the presentation, please?
well, my point is you received their presentation last Wednesday. You were copied on the email.
I did not receive it.
Can we just complete this and then you can ask your questions, please?
So this is the schedule that we're currently operating under. As you all are aware, there is a joint review board meeting that is scheduled for March 31st, 2 weeks from today. That has been publicly noticed, and individual notifications have been sent to the property owners within the proposed tax increment district boundaries. At that March 31st meeting, the Joint Review Board would review the TID plan, ask questions, have an opportunity to get information on it, and then they would set their next meeting date. They would not be taking action to approve the board. Also scheduled for March 31st is a special plan commission meeting. At that meeting, there would be a public hearing on TID 10. Actually, that's what was publicly noticed, the public hearing for the plan commission. The plan commission would review the project plan and the boundaries and take a vote on whether or not to approve those. Also scheduled for that meeting would be an initial review of zoning changes for the village center. Then at the April 7th Plan Commission meeting, which is a regular meeting, the Plan Commission would then be looking at and potentially taking action on the zoning changes that are being discussed and proposed for the village center. Following the approval of the zoning changes, there would be a release of an RFP for developers. So as was mentioned in some of the previous meetings before the village board, there were, I believe it was 15 different developers that had expressed an interest in partnering with the village on this project. Once we know what the zoning looks like, then we would send an RFP to those 15 developers and ask them to submit proposals. Those proposals would come back for review, and eventually the village would select a developer. Going back to the TID process, on April 21st, the village board would, again, according to the current schedule, review the project plan and the boundaries and vote on a TID resolution. Following village board approval, then under state statute, we have up to 45 days to schedule a final joint review board meeting for final action on the tax increment district. That 45 days expires on June 5th. And again, before the board considers taking action on the school board request, thought it was important to go through the schedule as it exists right now. And one of the things that I would suggest, and I guess request to staff, is if you do make a motion to change the schedule in support of what the school board is asking for, that you do attach some dates to it. Their request did not attach specific dates, and I think it is important to have a schedule of how this is going to work that we can communicate to the public so they're aware of what's going on. Some of the impacts of a delay. As has been mentioned here, we've already purchased 2 parcels, and we've committed to purchasing a 3rd parcel with a closing date of June 30th. And on that date, we will owe $5 million. And in order to finance that payment, we are going to have to issue debt for that $5 million, as well as the purchase price for those initial parcels. So if you do, you could cancel the joint review board and push it out another 30 to 60 days. But if the TID is not approved, then that debt service will have to be paid for from the property tax levy. So without a TID to finance the acquisition of these properties, and that is something that is still at the beginning of the process, then that debt service will go on the debt service property tax levy as we go through the budget process this fall. This would also you could delay the changes to the zoning code and the developer RFP process by 30 to 60 days. But again, that there is a cost to that because, again, our intention is to sell these properties to the developer. And as we're holding them, that does have a carrying cost of somewhere in the range of, $17,000 to $30,000 per month. In addition, this is a relatively minor cost, but I thought I should mention that there would be a cost to rescheduling the joint review board meeting, the notices that have to go out, all of that, the publications, and probably looking in the range of $1,500 to $5,000. And then the final slide, just some of my recommendations. First of all, I think everyone, agrees that the school board has raised some concerns that should be, that the village can and should address. One of the things that a question that I would put out, I have in my mind, is whether or not the enrollment study that the school district is undertaking is the best way to address those concerns. I think another way to address those concerns, after hearing what the school board has had to say, both in the meeting and in the resolution that they sent over, is by requesting, as we go through the RFP process, information from each one of the developers who proposes about the number of school-aged children they anticipate to have in their development. And again, that varies based on the style of the development. A development that has studio and one-bedroom apartments is going to have fewer school-aged children than a development that has 2, 3, and 4-bedroom apartments. In addition to that, we can ask for data on the annual apartment turnover rates in their other developments, which would help us to get an understanding of how this might impact the issue of transient student body within MacArthur Elementary. In addition, if we do take that route, the school district, the ROFR study is underway, and the findings of that study can be incorporated to the village board's process of reviewing proposals from developers and making sure that a developer is selected that addresses the concerns of the school district, and a development agreement is structured that addresses the concerns of the school district.
Questions?
This for discussion only, right?
Well, right now,
We don't know, yeah. So-
right now, I want to know if there's anybody has a questions on what Steve's presented. Trustee Cutts.
Just for, I guess, clarification, with the school board, it's not just the taxes, it's also the teachers and the staffing because of the turnover rate seeming to fall in July and August. So they're never sure from one time or beginning of summer to end of summer. So that's part of it too. It's not just the tax money. And then I was going to save this for H, but you had a time schedule on here, so I'm going to ask it now. Since we didn't actually approve a TID or the creation of a TID at the last meeting, and we're taking that up next, wouldn't the time period start from when it's actually approved to create it? Wouldn't it start over? Or as far as your scheduling goes?
Well, and I think, and this is an issue the village attorney was going to address under item H, but, you know, if you do recall, during the February 17th meeting, there was a lengthy discussion about the TID, and this timeline was included under that agenda item. And I think that from a staff perspective, when the village board approved acquisition of the properties, that the assumption was that you approved financing of the properties as well. And that's something the village attorney can address under item H.
Question? Trustee Keeper?
I just feel like it's the least we can do to allow the school board to get their study back. I mean, the more we're informed, the better. Well, I would like to adopt their resolution. I would like to collect more data. I tried to do it within the time period of the last several weeks. I have invested many, many, many hours into making sure that the research I'm looking at, you can compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges.
You're kind of.
And I've mentioned, hang on, please, hold on. The newest apartment buildings that Germantown has, Saxony Village. I would like to look in depth to the data at Saxony Village. How many units are they? I know they're all rented. How many children did that add to the village? I want to know what schools they all went to. Were they high school, middle school, MacArthur? And I also want to know if those students that were added, did they come from elsewhere in the Germantown district, or were they actually organically new? Or did they just sell their house and are living in their apartment till they get another, in Saxony Village till they get another house? So it didn't add a student to the district. But yes, they are living there rather than somewhere else in the district. I want real numbers, I want data, and this is the least we could do.
You're kind of in discussion of your motion. I just asked if there was a question with Steve's presentation.
I have
We
no
can get
question
into
with
the
Steve's
discussion of the
presentation.
motion once we resolved any questions on his presentation. Trustee Miller, did you have a question on the presentation or more of a discussion on the motion?
I have questions on his presentation because I was anticipating that he would have utilized the presentation from the actual school district board meeting that was presented. It was 10 slides. It was sent to you, President Walter, and the entire village board. Maybe Brian, I don't know, but that
If I
it was all sent to you.
If I can say, nobody from the school district, nobody from the school board
Chris Reuter.
Sent me anything with the intention of me making a presentation that they prepared on their behalf, which I think would be extremely unusual.
Well, I think some of the information in your, as trustee Kamensky pointed out, was incorrect. When you use or omit a word not, that's a huge difference.
Well, that wasn't purposeful. It was a mistake.
All right.
Are you
So-
saying he did it purposeful?
It was incorrect, okay?
And he recognized that.
So I feel like, I think to trustee Cutt's point, it's taken out of context. So Administrator Krecklow, it's taken out of context. It wasn't the TID they're worrying about. It's the schools are filled. The schools are filled. You saw the chart, the schools are filled.
It's
90%.
I
There's
think
no
I
room for
stated that in
children.
my presentation.
Okay, so that's the emphasis. That's the emphasis. Okay, so I agree with trustee Pieper that we should have the school district complete their $35,000 ROFRs project study, which is comprehensive about the children that that are coming from that MacArthur area that is dominantly currently apartments. And we should take that study and actually use it in our formulation of whether or not we should have a TID. And don't,
That's not what the motion is.
I'm just, whatever, I mean, that we should use the information in building the village of Germantown, whatever corner it's at. Because how we impact the schools, they're saying, what the point was, they don't want to go to referendum, because if they go to referendum, it's going to fail, right?
I don't know.
Well, anyway, the point is they're concerned about where are they going to put the children if you put something that big up. And it's not just this proposal. It's every proposal. We've seen 5 proposals for apartments, and it's a lot. Whether or not they go to all the same schools or not, a lot of them are going to those central
Is this
schools.
a question about the,
The question is, well, my question was, why didn't he use those statistics from the actual presentation that we saw on the 11th?
I did find the email that you referred to. Actually, sent me, what they sent was a link to the packet that included the presentation. There was not an email that requesting that I present their presentation to the board tonight.
But you got statistics that you could have used.
Yeah, I mean, I could, so if you, I mean, if you'd like, and we can pull this up on screen if you'd like, but looking at the capacity numbers, MacArthur Elementary currently has 487 students. It has target capacity of 528 is what their number said. So which would accommodate the number of students that we're estimating. And they did show the fluctuations, the enrollment trends. So in In 2021, in June, they were projecting 418 students at MacArthur. In September, they had 435. In June of 2022, they projected 453 in June. They had 478 in July. In 2023, they projected 468 in June. They had 480 in September. I'm sorry, those were September numbers, not July. In 2024, they projected 483 students. In June, they had 491 in September.
We have a motion, but I wanted to get any questions on the presentation out there, and we seem to be wandering into both. So if there's no other questions, we do have a motion on the floor. And Trustee Pieper, would you like to repeat that motion so everybody's clear on exactly what you're saying and what the motion is?
Yes, I would like to accept and implement the Germantown School Board's resolution.
Implements. And Trustee Jan Miller, you second that?
I second.
Village Attorney, clarify what that means in regards, I mean, is this a normal, do we take a resolution from the school board and make it our own? I mean, can you give us some outline here as to what exactly we should be doing with the resolution, or what considering to do with the resolution? for the
Pause.
School board? I'm asking the village attorney.
I mean, I don't really know what accept and implement means in this respect. I mean, the end result is that the resolution itself says district requests that the village not take any action to approve or permit any advancement of the village center project or otherwise allow the project to move forward until such time as the Germantown School District's enrollment and facility use studies have been completed and the district has held sufficient time to thoroughly analyze the studies and understand the potential impact continued high-density residential developments may have on the district and its educational community, including but not limited to the district's infrastructure and finances. If by adopt and implement, you just want to permanently shut down any discussion of Village Center?
That is not what I said. They're asking for us to delay until they get their study back.
Based on that
That's not what
outline,
that says.
that's not what it
That
says.
says they want their study and they want time to be able to analyze and implement and decide what they're going to do with the study.
So,
That could be,
hey, this is why I wanted to put the other item on the agenda above this one, because guess who showed up? Perfect.
So
Thank you.
when you say implement, please define what that means.
I think we need to respect the school board more than we have in our history with them, and I want to,
Nobody's discounting that, but you are saying.
I'm not
to
saying I don't want the
fully
village center
this
district to go
resolution.
forward.
So are you saying that until we hear back from the school board that they've done all these things that the last paragraph says, then we can move forward, or are you putting some sort of time frame on it?
Hold on. Would the school board, I know you guys can't vote on it right now, but the school board members that are here, would you respect it if we just put a hold until you got your study back?
Trustee Pieper. This
You
is-
always only bang the gavel at me.
Please keep it within this quorum, please. Now, my question to you, is it until we get information back, or is it within a time frame? You're saying to implement. I'm trying to get an understanding of what that means.
I think we can put a delay on moving forward with the TID in the Village Center District until they get their study back, which is estimated mid-April.
Not in the resolution.
Okay, then I withdraw my motion to approve the resolution, but I say we delay until they get their study back.
Present information of what that study is.
Huh?
And so that when they get their study back, then they will present that information and then we'll look at it.
Well, I would assume they wouldn't give us that information from
Say
the
by
study.
April 7th or by April 15th?
End of April.
Trustee Pieper, mid-April, April 7th?
I would
April
need to
15th.
confirm the date that they are expecting that study to be given to them.
Trustee
I
Kaminsky.
seriously can't just ask them, they're right here.
Where do I begin? Steve, I'm sorry, did you want to say?
I was just going to say that we did ask that meeting at the village board meeting, and what the superintendent, or I apologize, the school board meeting.
Mhm.
We asked at the school board meeting if there was a a due date for the study. There was not a specific due date. My recollection of the response was that that by late April or mid-May, that they would have the study back.
This being our meeting,
School board president, do you agree with that statement? It's my meeting.
our meeting.
Going to have to come to the mic.
Pete's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you guys have a meeting set for early
April
next
3rd.
next month, and Richfield will follow that. So those are pieces of data that they need in regards to that report.
Okay.
Or the initial was the end of April.
Okay.
If
Just
it,
for
if it were to
clarification.
push into May, I wouldn't be overly shocked if it was the beginning of May.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Kaminsky.
Okay, now, our school board president wasn't here for your presentation, and the part I liked about your presentation was, I think it created a balance to try to serve what the school board wants us to do, is to find out how many kids could potentially happen in this development. I like the idea of meeting with the developers, and decisions can still be made at that time. We are too far along at this TID to lose money and to lose dates, closing dates and everything else. I really think it's kind of a delay tactic, to be brutally honest. That's just my jaded, cynical opinion of all this. There are the people that don't want the multifamily downtown, and there are those of us that do, in a sense. And if Phil Hudson were still here, we all know where he stood on this. He thought it was the best thing that we could do for the village of Germantown. That would have been your other vote. And I agree with him. I've said it a million times, we have to do something unless we want to become the West Allis of the northwest suburbs. We're well on our way of doing that if we don't start doing something in our downtown area. Go to Thiensville, go to Mequon, take a look at what they've done. Their apartments are awesome. If you've ever been in one, we're talking upscale, we're talking professional couples. Most of these people don't even have kids. They don't want yards. They want something super upscale where they can walk to restaurants, typical of what young people want today. So anyway, that aside, I think you have a good compromise here where we sit down and we meet with these developers as they come in, and that would be in June, still plenty of time. These apartments aren't going to pop up in the next 2 years. Who are we kidding? School board has tons of time to plan. And this should not halt our other developments either in this village. Our job is to manage development. And if a majority of us see this village center as something important to the future, not to us like, oh, I don't want apartments now. If you had talked to me when I joined this board, like, 13 years ago, I was anti-apartment to the max. But you look around the surrounding communities, where are people moving? They're moving into upscale apartments. So yes, I've changed my opinion on that to a degree. I don't want schlocky apartments like the ones we have from the 70s and 80s. Of course, they're going to have student drift in that because they're transient. Those are cheap apartments that are transient. People pop in for 6 months or a year and they pop out. The type of apartments we're talking about, go look at Thiensville, tour those apartments, talk to the residents there, and you will see these are people that want to live there and make a home there and build a community here. And if we delay this, we are insane. Then we might as well all just go home, because this is something we've worked on now for 1.5 years, almost 2 years, to reach fruition. For the future of Germantown, not, I don't like apartments. We're beyond that. People can't even afford, and you heard it, I know it was said in a negative way, the development on County Line Road. Yes, developers have to make a certain nut to make a profit. Just like a Starbucks won't open if they can't make a profit. That is what business and capitalism is about. And we have to understand that. And look, I can't say another thing, except I think you've reached a good compromise. And I would stick with the compromise, stick with the timeline, and let's just get going on this and quit being, I don't want apartments. Look at what's happening around you in the surrounding communities. And if you want to hold us back even further, then West Allis, here we come.
I want clarification on the motion.
I withdrew it.
Okay.
So can I use my second bite regarding discussion, or
Can
do
you
I need to
repeat
make
the
a motion?
motion so we know what we're discussing, please?
I withdrew it.
Oh, you withdrew it. So then we need a motion.
Okay, in order for me to make a comment, we need to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, fine. I make a motion to table item H until,
Out of order.
not indefinitely.
Out of order.
Well,
We're on
they
G.
literally go together.
You're out of order. It's G.
They're asking us to delay H.
Going to take it up with H, but right now we're on G. You're out of order.
You're out of order.
No, you're out of order. We're on G.
Okay. Feel free, board. I'm only one person. Chime in anytime.
So can I just
Shut the
jump?
village attorney.
So one of the things that I was getting at in the discussion is that the resolution is not real clear in terms of what specifically the request is. You could read it to be, don't do anything, period. You could read it as it relates to advancement of the project, meaning the TID is fine, but the zoning and the RFP process and that kind of stuff would be something that's put on hold. You know, as I said before, it's not totally clear as to how long of a delay they want. Is it just until they get the report? Or is it get their report and then spend the next 6 months discussing and arguing the report and what it means and how we're going to implement it and then make a recommendation? None of that is very clear. And so I think that what this body needs to do is recognize, you know, similar to what Mr. Kirklow said, that you have to recognize that they've come to you to say, hey, we're worried about this. It's a concern. It's something that I think is appropriate to do. But I think that you need to, as you're weighing your decision in terms of how you act next, you have to keep in mind two things. Number one is that at the end of the day, it is your decision as to how development happens within the community. And number two, you have to protect your interests overall in terms of what happens. And so, you know, I think you can move forward on a TID and create the TID without doing the development project, figure out what that, you know, what the study comes back with, figure out what that means in terms of the zoning, figure out what that means in terms of dealing with the developer, and then, you know, going that approach. That protects the village in the sense that you've got 2 properties you've already purchased and another one that's under contract with no contingencies, so we are going to close on it. And that protects you in terms of the finances of the village. It may be that the development that comes out of it is maybe different than what, you know, has been kind of thought about all along. Maybe not. I mean, we got to see what the study comes back and says at the end of the day, but I think that that's a way that you maybe accomplish both. But I think either way, whether you just say we're going to just hold everything or we're going to split it or whatever the case is, I will echo Mr. Krecklow's point that I think you need to establish the timeline that you expect in terms of what's going on, because, you know, it may be, and while I don't think that the school district would, I think that they are, you know, coming with you with a legitimate and realistic problem that they're looking to address. But you also have to set the expectation that, look, we're going to listen to you, we're going to consider what you're going to say, but that doesn't mean that we're going to just halt all development within the village. Maybe that's what you want, and that's fine, but my guess is probably not.
I was told to hold my tongue till the next item.
May I follow up with the village attorney, please?
Yes. Trustee Kaminsky.
So, you know, I feel like this resolution isn't allowing us to make the motion we want to make, which is, we don't want the resolution, but we will, in fact, take into account whatever shows up in their study, assuming it shows up between now and June or whenever we meet with our developers. But we can't make that motion because we have to vote on the resolution. You know, so I feel like the resolution is locking us in as opposed to them just coming to us and saying, hey, I got these concerns. Would you take them seriously? Yes, we will.
They're showing their seriousness through the resolution.
Well, there you go. But if you don't agree with all the wording in the resolution, which is so vague, you can't approve that. It's going to take us totally off track and cost the village money. To me, it seems anti-TID, I'm sorry, and anti-apartment.
We have no motion.
And we don't need one. It's for discussion only or a motion.
That's correct.
We've had discussion.
Can I make a motion to
I'd
have the
like to make a
attorney work with the school board and revise the resolution to be acceptable by us?
Yes. Yes.
I don't see what the problem is that we can't delay this. All right, make motion, guys.
Trustee Jan Miller.
Is that your
Discuss anything.
Why do we need a motion?
You don't.
It's informational.
Then why wouldn't you?
It's,
Unless I'm.
I would like to make a motion, please. So we stop arguing. I I would like to make a motion that we take this resolution seriously and that we wait on the TID.
Go ahead, make your motion.
I think that we should delay the current village schedule until we have more information from the Germantown School District regarding the Rofers project survey so that we can work together to make sure that we have enough school space for anyone that moves in. That's the point.
Is this that's your motion?
Yes, to delay the village schedule until and start it up again. And when we get the Rofers project survey study and discuss it in a joint meeting with the Germantown School District.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Rick Miller.
If that includes the creation of the TID, then there's no way I'm voting for that because the TID to me is exclusive. That is pretty much an oversight from when we approved the purchase of the 3 properties. It was discussed. I assumed that was part of the last meeting. And okay, we're going to take care of that tonight. So if you're talking about the development, what the development looks like, I'm all for it. Sure, we can wait until the end of April because nothing's going to happen until then.
Until June.
So if this includes holding the TID, absolutely not. If you're saying hold off what this looks like and what the development is going to look like and discuss that, then I'm fine with waiting because like I said, nothing is going to happen that fast. It won't be April.
So you would incorporate the results of the study into the RFP to develop.
I mean, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And that's how I interpreted this, is that, okay, great. There's a report coming out in April, and I think we should adhere to that and consider that when we're looking at what this has done.
Mm-hmm.
But the creation of the TID is exclusive of that. It doesn't say anything about the TID in here. It says the development. That's not the development. That's the financing for it.
Further discussion.
So like I said, I need some clarification on the motion or it's going to be a no.
Trustee Warren.
I came into this meeting 6 hours, no, it was 3 hours ago, with the opinion that we should delay this, because my feeling was that we were ramming this through and we weren't doing our due diligence and taking into account the studies that the school board was doing and some other concerns. But after hearing the discussion here, I'm all for voting for the TID now, with the understanding that we will still have time to incorporate whatever findings come out of whatever studies at a later date. But I don't want to jeopardize the schedule to accomplish that. I'm comfortable that we'll still have time, even though the TID's up and running, to take in all the information that we need to put out an RFP that reflects all the concerns of all the entities in this.
Further discussion. Trustee Jan Miller.
Just to add to that, we did not vote on a TID.
We're clear there.
I'm just saying.
We're clear on that. That's why it's here on
keeps
tonight's
coming. Well,
tonight's agenda.
I think it was a misstep. Attorney Sajak was here. Administrator Krekla was here for that vote.
No, he wasn't. He was actually on the road, but
Okay, then Attorney Sajak was here
Mhm.
and should have made it come forward. But right now, there is no TID right now. So that if you go through this, I agree with you. You still have to take into consideration, I have the floor, not you, Terry, that we have to take into consideration what the school district comes forward with, because it's going to have a great big impact.
Nobody's agreeing with that.
So there's nothing wrong with this resolution. That's my point. If we just move this schedule out.
What you understand in regards to the schedule as it stands allows for time for that information to be incorporated to the RFPs to the developers.
So they
So-
have,
So that would fit
We-
to the resolution last statement, would it not?
what's your point?
My point is that they're asking that we wait for development or on a development until they get the results of their study. And everybody that I've heard in discussion so far say, yes, I agree with that. And we can still do that within the time frame as it stands today. Because we won't go out for RFP until June. So if they get their study at the end of April and into May, and we don't go out for RFP till June, it still falls within that time frame. Trustee Cutts.
I'm going to make an amendment to the motion and help me with this if I don't get it right. But I would like to make an amendment that we take into consideration the results of both studies that the school district is getting, and we incorporate that into the RFPs for the development.
Excellent.
Correct?
I agree.
I'll second that.
I-
Can you say that again, Trustee Cutts?
I'll try. I would like to amend the motion to take into consideration the results of the facility use study and the ROFR study from the school district and incorporate that into our RFPs for the development of the area.
Okay, that's the motion to amend. Do we have a second?
Yeah, second.
Yeah, I already seconded.
Motion made and seconded by Trustee Pieper. Discussion on the motion to amend. All those in favor, please say aye.
Before,
Aye.
sorry,
Aye.
before we, Mr. President, sorry. Before you do that, I think we want to make sure we know what we're amending and how that interplays, because the amendment as it's read, I think just adds an additional requirement to the existing motion,
Okay.
which I'm not sure was the intent. Maybe it was.
I'm okay with it.
Well, so
Okay with it.
the original motion as I have it was to take the resolution seriously and to halt the TID and development schedule and to discuss the findings of the report at a joint meeting with the school district. Right? That was your motion? And then the amendment is to take into consideration the results of the facility use study and the ROFR study to incorporate that in the RFP. I read that to be an additional on top of what was there, which is fine, and maybe that was the intent,
No.
but I just want to make sure that that's what everybody understands.
No,
Okay.
my intent
So-
was not to add on
would be
to
best
the
if they
original.
both-
Let her speak. Let Trustee Cutts speak, please.
My intent was not to add on to the original, but to clarify some parameters that we're not tying it to the TID, but to the future development.
So can they just withdraw both of those motions and make a nice clean one? That would make it a lot easier if you guys just withdraw the motion and make a new one.
Jan's motion and then make that as a.
Yeah, we could do that too.
I
Two ways.
withdraw my motion.
Okay, motion to amend is withdrawn
But then Jan would need to withdraw her motion and original one.
if she wants.
Yes, or we can vote on it.
Did Trustee Jan Miller say you were withdrawing your motion?
Did I what?
Did you say you were withdrawing your motion?
Did not.
No.
No, I didn't think so.
S-
So your motion stands as stated right now.
that we should, repeat it?
Exactly.
Accept the resolution
Right, to take the resolution seriously and to halt TID and development schedule and discuss the findings of the report at a joint meeting
Until
between the
we
school
have-
district and the village board.
until we have that.
That's your motion.
Pause, you could use the word pause instead of halt.
Motion? That's your motion?
Yes,
Okay, that, further discussion.
and include the, oh, sorry.
Wait, doesn't she need a second? Because Meg
You
withdrew.
had a second already.
She had a second.
Trustee Cutts seconded it when she first made it.
And include the reason we're pausing is to include the facilities and ROFRs studies in our decision-making process.
Yeah,
That was the amendment.
I vote to make a motion to call the question.
Motion made to call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Roll call vote.
I'm confused.
We're making a motion on Jan's original, we're voting on Jan's original motion.
Which stops the tip.
Okay.
It pauses.
Donna can read the motion that we're voting on.
Just did, but go ahead, read it again so everybody
If
understands.
anybody's confused.
Pause.
There's no discussion.
One at a time, please. Can we please reread the motion so that trustee Warren and everybody understands? The motion on the floor is that we're going to be voting on, that we called the question to.
You're gonna look at me? All right.
Hmm.
I have it as it is a motion to take the school district resolution seriously and to pause the TID and development schedule so that the joint or the report can be discussed at a joint meeting of the school board and village board.
Incorporated in the RFP.
We ready?
Well, that was part of the amendment that got withdrawn. That was not part of your original motion.
All right, roll call vote.
Trustee Warren,
No.
trustee Katz,
Aye.
trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
trustee Pieper. Trustee Rick Miller. Trustee Kaminsky. Village President Walter.
No. New motion.
Motion.
Okay.
Trustee Cutts.
I make a motion that we
Can I? How
get,
about if I give you a suggested motion?
thank you.
Maybe that'll help. I would suggest perhaps based on the discussion that we're hearing, that what we're looking for is a motion to accept the school district resolution and to direct staff to delay the zoning district standards for the Village Center project at Pilgrim and Mecron Road until such time as we receive the facility use and ROFR studies to consider incorporation of the same into those design standards and the RFP for development.
So moved.
Second.
You have all that down.
I do have all that done.
So who made the motion?
And I second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Question,
Trustee Kaminsky.
clarification. So we're not mentioning the TID, obviously, but we are accepting the resolution as it stands?
Accepting just like we're receiving it.
Oh, so we don't have to follow.
Correct.
Okay. So basically, we're gonna, it's kind of what you had suggested, Steve, that we're gonna wait until the RFP process and then take everything into account and then make the decision as to what we can do with the housing with the kids.
But he also incorporated the zoning in there.
Is that good or bad?
You also incorporated the bringing the zoning forward until we heard the results of that study.
I mean, in all honesty, in my opinion, I think they're very closely related. So
So everybody understands. Trustee Miller. Rick Miller.
Yeah, one of the things you had mentioned was about the facility study, and in the resolution, it says nearing completion of a facility study to better understand capacity is, what's the time frame on that?
That was presented at tonight's school board meeting.
Right.
Oh, so it's done. Well, thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great.
Thank you.
Great question.
Further discussion? Trustee Warren?
So at the end of the day, are we delaying ratifying the amendment for the TID?
No.
You're shaking yes, Dean's shaking no.
But this motion would not do anything as it relates to the TID process itself.
Okay,
We would still vote on that as part of the next item.
Next time.
thank you.
Okay.
Further discussion?
Yeah.
No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries
We did it.
unanimous. Okay, that takes care of item G. That was easy.
We actually just.
Next
took one
item
off.
H. A resolution ratifying an amendment to the scope of services with Ailers and Associates for work related to the creation of a tax increment district in the Village Center District. Board?
Make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Cutts.
I still have, I guess, the same concerns I had the first time with the unknowns involved, upkeep, Parks and Rec, all that. And then we had the demolition of the building come forward, which was an additional cost we didn't know about. I did go on the Department of Revenue site, and just to make, I guess you might be aware of this already, I don't know how this pertains, but they have some question and answers. And it says, if a municipality incurs expenses before it creates a TID, can these expenses be recovered? And says the municipality can only recover expenses directly related to planning the district. And then the next one is, if they purchase property before it creates the TID and sells the property after it's approved, can the property purchase be considered a TID expense? And it says, no, the property purchase is not an eligible TID expense. The purchase occurred before the TID was approved and is not a planning expense. So I don't know how that pertains to the general cash reserves that we use to fund this.
Sure. Very simply, yes, the demolition expense before the TID is created would not be an eligible expense. The village is holding off on executing that contract. We got it approved, but we're holding off on execution until the TID is formally approved, assuming that it gets approved. That would cover that particular issue. As it relates to the second one about purchasing property ahead of time, most communities don't fund pure out property acquisition through the TID itself. Generally, it's what they call it's part of an assemblage of land to encourage some development. And what the statute allows for is not, as a project expense in the TID, is not the actual acquisition cost, but basically the difference in the acquisition cost versus whatever it might be sold for. So the easier way of saying that, or maybe a more nuts and bolts way of saying that is that if we bought property for $5 million, and then we, as part of the development of that property, sold it to a developer for $5 million, the general fund gets reimbursed the $5 million, and that's that. We move forward and everybody's happy.
And the revenue stays in the TID then?
What's that?
Any revenue would stay in the TID because that would be above?
Nope, that revenue would go first back to the general fund to recoup the cost of the purchase. If there was a circumstance where we bought it for $5 million and then we sold it for $6 million, we would recoup the $5 million for the general fund as part of it, but then the $1 million extra becomes increment or not increment, but revenue into the TID, and that gets applied to the TID for TID expenses otherwise. In the event that it's the opposite, we buy it for $5 million and we sell it for $4 as an incentive, basically, to the developer. Hey, we're going to help incentivize you to buy this property, get your return that you're going to need in order to do it, that type of discussion. The difference between that is the increment. So when we sell it for $4, the general fund gets the $4 million as part of the sales price, but that that increment, that 1 million from the 4 to the 5 becomes a project cost of the TID that the TID can then pay back. So obviously, if you just gave the property away, then the full $5 million could potentially be an incentive under the TID. And that's allowed for in a different section of the TID statute, not related to project costs, but or planning cost, but instead just related generally to project costs. And I can certainly give you that site if you're interested in looking at it.
Okay, just to clarify, because you said if there's a loss, then that's an expense paid, the TID pays back to the general cash reserves. But this says the property purchase is not an eligible TID expense. So if there's a loss, can that be part of the TID? Because, I mean, just me reading that statute 66.11055E makes it sound like that could not be paid back to the village.
Right, it's not a planning expense. It's what they call an assemblage expense or assemblage of real estate. And that language does specifically talk about, and I'm just trying to pull it up here so I can read the exact language for you. But it does talk about that situation that we talked about.
Further discussion? Trustee Jan Miller.
Brian, in the, one of the documents, I thought it was the closing document. It's said something about, if the property goes for sale, whether it's $1 or whatever, something happens. Do you remember that clause? On the sale document? For it would have been the Flower Source.
Is that your description isn't ringing a bell specifically?
Okay. But it's your basic example of what you're talking to Trustee Cutts about, that we actually take a loss on the sale of the property. And where does the money go? And how does our general fund get paid back?
Didn't he just say that?
Yeah.
Right, then it becomes a TID expense. So the language that I was talking to Trustee Cutts about is 66.1105 sub 2 sub F sub 1 sub C. A lot of subs there. And it reads, real property assembly costs, meaning any deficit incurred resulting from the sale or lease by the lessor by the city of real property within a tax increment district for consideration, which is less than its cost to the city. So again, that circumstance where you bought it for 5 and you're going to, for whatever reason, either because it's just the market, because you're going to do it as an incentive, whatever the case may be, that deficit that is created becomes a project cost to the TID. Basically, the TID then makes up that difference to make the city's general fund whole as part of a project cost. So you're not physically acquiring the property with the TID funds, but you're utilizing TID funds as a project cost to cover that differential if it's there. The flip side of that the statute or that the legislature builds into the statute is that what's fair on one side is fair on the other side. So if you sell it for a profit, then you got to apply that to the TID because it's within the TID and you have to do it. So that's kind of the trade-off that the statute makes.
Thank you.
Further discussion? No further discussion? Roll call vote. The motion is to resolution ratifying an amendment to the scope of services with Ailers and Associates for work related to creation of a tax increment district within the Village Center District.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Cutts,
No.
trustee Jane Miller,
No.
trustee Peeper,
I abstain. Just not gonna vote.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky. Village President Walter.
Aye. Just so everybody's clear, tonight's approval does not make this a TID. There is still the Joint Review Board, which moves it forward to Plan Commission. In Plan Commission, there is a public hearing. After the public hearing, it then goes to the Village Board for their approval, and then it goes to the JRB, the Joint Review Board, one final time where all representatives of the taxing district are there, and based on the direction that they've given from their boards, then final vote is made, and then it's a TID. So right now, it's just approving Ailers to go through with the expenses, to get it going through to the JRB first, then to the Plan Commission for public hearing, then to the Village Board, and then to the JRB for final vote after that. So it's just approving Ailers costs at this time. What? It's not a TID until it goes through all its processes, which is about 4 or 5 more steps.
Was there a cost in the packet? Steve?
Generally, this process costs about $15,000.
Thank you.
All right, that then takes us to item I. There's 2 recommendations for a closed session. First, item I is claim for damages of Angie Burnt. Village Board may reconvene or may convene into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subsection 1 subparagraph G for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as it deems appropriate. And then item J, which is administrator setting 2025 performance goals, Village Board may convene into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subsection 1 subparagraph C for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employer over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as it deems appropriate.
Make a motion.
Wait, hold on.
Oh,
Sorry. Just before we go into to take a vote, just wanted to highlight something for all of you. You'll notice that in this packet, as we did actually in the last packet, we've started to include in the item summary a little bit more of a detailed discussion of the actual basis as to why we think that you can go into closed session. That's really a result of a recent case that came down where we're just trying to incorporate what the court said in that case here. The idea being really that the public has as much right as anything to know why it is that we're going into closed session. So we try to highlight that a little bit within the item summary so it's there. Obviously, you're always free to go into or not go into closed session as you see fit. And you should just recognize that we kind of talk about those reasons, and you could certainly debate or argue those reasons as part of that type of discussion. So just kind of a housekeeping item before we consider a motion.
This person isn't in the audience, is this?
No.
No, okay. Then we can go in closed session. I'm also going to make a suggestion, or actually a motion, that we delay the second one, the administrator's performance goals, until the
Second.
next meeting.
Second.
Bunch.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. So now we need a motion for aye, please.
Closed session for this?
For aye?
Rick,
Yes.
Okay.
you can sleep here then.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session.
Second for
And we don't.
Item
need
I.
who?
We include
police
Chief
chief,
Merton,
Chief, okay.
attorney.
Oh.
Steve, you want to be here or no?
Steve.
Should be yours.
All right, fine. Donna goes
I
home.
want Donna here.
No, Donna goes home. Terry and I made the motion. You didn't.
Okay, thank you. Hey, I got one thing I want to talk to you about. I got,
We got to vote.
it's different.
Did we voted? We got to.
Who was the second?
Yeah, we got to vote to go into closed
Wait.
session.
Any discussion? All those, a roll call vote, please.
Money.
Roll call vote on the go into closed session.
Trustee Warren. Trustee Ketz.
Aye.
Trustee Baum.
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Pieper.
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller. Trustee Kaminsky. Village President Walter.
Aye.